This magical story unfolded on January 31st, in the year 512 of the Philian calendar. Seneca, a beautiful and thriving capital city, on a day that would be etched in history, a young girl lost everything. She met her end after being struck down by Bella, a powerful and beautiful witch. The witch had saved her when she was just a child, and she became part of her family, always kind to the girl. After the awful tragedy, Bella blamed herself for everything and decided to give Elaine her heart so she could live. Bella's tears, those were the girl's last memories. Then the witch asked her to protect her child, Rihai. 20 years later, believing she had died, Elaine woke up with white hair. That's when it hit her. Bella, Rihai, her whole family was gone. That's when she lost it all. However, there was still him, the one person from whom she had to keep her existence a secret. Rihai, her one and only Rihai. This time she'll definitely be able to protect him. My one and only Bella, and her precious Rihi, her one and only Rihi. Since Bella's last wishes had to be honored, Elaine gave Rihi her loyalty. Swearing on her life, she promised to protect him, to find Bella, even if it meant risking everything. Back when she was a kid, her stepmom left Elaine alone under a tree, promising she'd be back with her dad. The little girl could do it. She just had to sit there and wait for them to come back. An hour passed, then 2. Elaine waited half the day, but her stepmom never showed. That's how she ended up all alone. A year later, when she was 9, she was roaming the streets, living the usual life of a stray, scrounging for food. Seeing the hungry little girl by the counter, the kind woman could tell she was starving. The poor thing wanted to eat some raspberries and was planning to buy bread later with the money she earned. Worried about the girl, the woman gave her a bunch of bread on the house and reminded her that there were monsters in the woods. No matter what, Elaine was allowed to come to this place if she suddenly got hungry. But they asked her to stay away from here since this was where they sold bread. Compared to that day a year ago, when Elaine's stepmother dumped her, she didn't even have enough money for a ride home. Everyone walked right past her, like she wasn't even there. This little aristocratic girl was left to fend for herself on the streets. The whole time she was haunted by the cold and hunger and the taunts of the street kids, and some pretty rough treatment. Let's just say things were tough for little kids back then. The urgent notice on the bulletin board was her only hope that her adoptive parents were looking for her. Even if her real mom had passed away, Elaine was still her father's child. She was his family. Her hopes were answered. There was an announcement on the bulletin board from the Crystalia family. But it wasn't what the girl wanted to see. Her family was celebrating the birth of a son. But hey, at least that news helped Elaine adjust to her crummy life. I mean, her stepmom was a real piece of work, ditching her out of fear she'd steal her own kid's spotlight. Searching for a place to crash, the girl stumbled on an empty lot nobody owned, so at least she could sleep there tonight. And she even had bread. This was her lucky day, until her luck ran out, that is. For the next while, a terrified and beat-up Elaine was hiding in the woods from the guy who attacked her. She knew if that dude caught her, she was totally done for. Down in the dumps about her fate, the little kid didn't get what she'd done to deserve this kind of life. She kept telling herself that until she pulled herself together and decided she had to bolt like yesterday. Realizing it had gotten quiet around there, the brave girl figured the psycho was gone and took off running like the wind. But even being careful, fate had other plans. She was about to come face to face with a real monster. Elaine got it. Whether it was that guy or this monster, she was trapped, and dying by the monster's hand was not an option. Staring death in the face, the little kid made a wish that in her next life, she'd be born into a loving family. In that fateful moment, as if by divine intervention, the witch used her powers to shield the girl from the clutches of death. The monster Elaine feared so much was destroyed by this woman with kind eyes. Her name was Bella. It was their first meeting, but the girl was too weak to thank her savior back then. Saving the little hero from death was like her rebirth into a life different from her past. Even the next morning, her subconscious wouldn't let her wake up, tormenting her with brutal memories of the monster and her parents. When that darn monster got so close she could feel its breath, Elaine pleaded for help. Opening her eyes and seeing a white room around her, the girl figured it must have been a nightmare. However, the place she'd ended up in was completely unfamiliar to her. This wood-paneled room and that calming scent, it's like she's been here before. Suddenly hearing footsteps coming closer, the girl, scared of what was happening, pretended to still be asleep. That gentle voice was Bella's. She used her powers right out in the open because that monster almost ate the kid. She came to check on the girl, but she was going to decide what to do with her after she woke up. According to the master, there's no question about it, since the girl saw the mistress use her power. Knowing what usually happens next, Bella insisted that this kid is human, and not all humans are bad. Either way, the master was furious about what happened and couldn't accept a human child. Luckily, the sorceress didn't have to wake anyone. The injured girl woke up on her own. Happy that her fever finally broke, Mistress Bella decided to ask the girl how she was feeling. This person's true identity is a blue flame. There are tons of stories about them, stories that are hundreds of thousands of years old. Some say she was around way before Felion was even a thing. A witch. Seeing the crazy powers this woman had way back when, Elaine didn't need to be a genius to figure out she was a witch. If folks want to call her a witch, then she's cool with owning that title, no problem. When the kid asked her real name, Bella chuckled, 'cause no one had asked her that before. They got to know each other better, but now it was clear Elaine was fresh out of options. She'd been wandering the streets, just trying to survive and not starve to death. So, since she had nowhere else to go, Bella was nice enough to offer her a place to crash here. The kid was thinking, like, a witch probably wouldn't save her just to pull some shady stuff later, right? So, out of desperation, our little hero ended up staying in this sweet spot with Bella. Since she had nowhere else to turn, she agreed to stick around, but something was still bugging her. The girl was worried the madam's husband didn't like her. But he's actually Bella's friend. They're gonna get along great, especially since Esmel's a demon. As Elaine climbed up the steep bank from the river, she figured all demons just naturally hated humans. She tripped and almost ate it if that scary-looking demon hadn't caught her. Seeing him that close, the girl was speechless, but she managed to thank him. Without a word, the guy turned to leave, but the girl ran after him, asking for just a sec. He stopped short and guessed Bella already told her what he was. In that case, the girl should know he's not thrilled about her being here. Figuring there was no point in beating around the bush, Esmel straight up told her, "This kid's gotta go." Thinking it was because she was human, the girl hinted that Bella had told her a few things. That used to be true, but not anymore. Esmail just can't stand the thought of living under the same roof as her. If he hated people, he wouldn't have saved her. So if it's not that, then Bella's not telling us the whole story. The boss thought it was way too suspicious to stick around here with them, especially since Bella was being so nice to the kid. The witch lived alone for so long, she knows what loneliness feels like. That's why she offered to let the little girl stay. Plus, she actually found it in herself to take in a human, even though she's never let anyone get close before. Sure, some people are okay, but once upon a time, the only person Bella ever loved betrayed her. The one she trusted totally screwed her over, slipped her something nasty, and she started coughing up blood. All for eternal life. They believed that drinking a witch's blood would make you live forever. Back then, those cursed people really believed it. They hurt Bella just to get a taste of her blood. And even after all that messed up stuff in her past, the witch brought a human kid in here. Esme couldn't stand seeing Bella suffer anymore. That's the real reason he hates that kid. Now Elaine gets it. Esme doesn't trust her. He must really care about Bella. Seemed like the only option was to leave them, but the girl wanted to stay with Bella anyway. The witch saved her at the lowest point in her life, the only one who reached out to her. Elaine had never felt such warmth, and Bella brought her back to life, showing her what love is. She saved her from the brink, genuinely worried about her, and smiled at her so sweetly. That's why the girl decided she'd return the favor to the mistress, so she could smile too. Knowing she'll be stubborn, the demon has no choice but to let it slide. But if that girl hurts Bella, Esme will get rid of her, no questions asked. Right now, though, Elaine's more curious about how he got so close to her when she was falling. They barely had a chance to work things out when suddenly, a gorgeous witch emerged from the trees. Overjoyed, the girl rushed into her arms and explained that Esmel had let her live there, and now she was doing so much better. Looks like they just leveled up their relationship. Afterward, Bella taught the girl how to fence, confident that Elaine would soon become a master. They also traveled the country, and in their 5th year together they met someone. The first prince and heir apparent of the kingdom of Filion, Lloyd Filion. Bella and Lloyd fell head over heels for each other, and soon after they had a beautiful son, Rehai Filion. Every day was like a fairy tale. Elaine prayed these days would never end, but her dream wouldn't come true. Years later, there were long discussions in the kingdom of Filion about what to give Rehai as a gift. Lloyd's son's birthday is in a month, but he hasn't let on that he's already finished the preparations for the party. The fact that he kept everything a secret pissed Bella off, 'cause she wanted to help with the cooking. The guy just brushed it off, said he wanted to make it a surprise, and then suddenly changed the subject to that gorgeous necklace she was wearing. It's a gift from His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor. Feeling bummed that his son's so far from home, he gave the lady this pendant. To say the prince was surprised his dad gave Bella something like that is an understatement. Just then, the butler walked in, said His Majesty needed to get going, council was starting soon. In that case, Lloyd promised to be back closer to lunchtime to have dinner with Reha. Meanwhile, seeing the precious materials, the blacksmith had never seen anyone catch a saliva before. It wasn't hard for 20-year-old Elaine. She made it as a gift for Reha. Come to think of it, the crown prince is 3 years old. Time flies anyway. The guy's gotta get to work. Since the girl brought good ingredients, he promised to finish in a month. That's perfect timing. She was heading to the capital. She hadn't been home for a full 10 days while she was out catching saliva. Back then, all she hoped for was to see Rihai's face, believing he'd be happy to see her. When they met, the little guy was interested in a gift, and Elaine promised to give him anything he wanted. Since he could ask for anything at all, Rihai, without hesitation, chose a warrior's sword as his gift. Elaine can't give him that sword right now because Register's too little, and he understands that. Feeling the most tender emotions for her brother, the girl eagerly awaited that day. After lunch, Lloyd still hadn't arrived, and Bella was getting worried about him being so late. Just then, there was a knock at the door. A maid asked permission to enter and speak with her. The girl was hesitant to answer if Lloyd had arrived. The thing is, for some reason there was no council meeting today. She also asked the other maids. Everyone present saw them being led to the main building, to the altar. Bella thought about it and realized this place was usually only used for holidays. She asked a maid to watch Rehi, promising to find Dad and be right back. On the way, she could hardly believe she was sensing dark energy. The further Bella went, the stronger it felt. Being sure this was a secret place, she couldn't figure out where the energy was coming from. A sinister aura followed her every step, growing stronger with each one. The stench of dark energy led her to a terrible place, where Bella saw something seriously messed up was going down. In that moment, a ton of questions flooded her head. What is this place? Who are these people? What's happening? She had no clue. But what really made her lose it was Lloyd. The sight of his bloody, lifeless body left her speechless. That evening, the crows were super noisy. Elaine knew it was a sign that something was up. Bent over her husband's body, a distraught Bella couldn't believe her husband was lying in front of her. Her hands trembling with fear, she touched his cold body, trying to understand why he was lying there. Lloyd's death, especially so sudden and strange, ripped a hole in the lady's heart. All she wanted was for him to wake up. The Emperor was the one who grieved the most. He had Lloyd's blood on his hands. He held his heart. Realizing the Emperor had offed his own son sent Bella into hysterics. She was crying and screaming, completely freaked out. Suddenly, she went silent, hearing weird voices in her head. Everything around her was clouding her mind. A terrifying voice in her head kept telling her to open her eyes, mentioning the one who tore out the heart. Trying to block out the voice, Bella noticed her necklace rising up and glowing red. She'd seen this before. If you offer a sacrifice, you can curse someone. It's the dragon's eye. Realizing the Emperor didn't give her the necklace with good intentions, the lady decided to take it off immediately. But she can't remove the necklace now that the curse is active. He's going to control her body now. This curse is fueled by Lloyd's blood, so the Emperor ordered us to obey him for Lloyd's sake. In Bella's crazed state, all she sees is a guy she needs to tear to shreds. That sinister necklace has clouded her mind. There's no escaping the voice in her head. It's pushing her to kill. Elaine was almost there when it got freezing cold, and she saw a weird light in the street. She barely had time to think something was up when she saw the royal court pouring out in a panic. Fear gripped her. For a second, she forgot how to breathe, seeing the unholy mess happening there. That magic, like a blanket of sand settling everywhere, definitely belongs to Bella. It's her blue flame. Elaine had only one question. How did this happen? Bella's flame is coming from the palace. Even though it's super dangerous, the brave girl rushed forward, feeling it was her duty to find her mother. The moment that blue flame burst from the palace, she saw Bella, like a wild animal, totally changed. The witch, possessed by some inner demon, went straight for her daughter, seeing her as nothing but a target. Elaine didn't get why she was being attacked until she saw the burning medallion and realized Bella had lost it. Still hoping to stop Bella, the girl desperately tried to calm her down without hurting her. But driven by those awful voices in her head, the witch had crazy strength and shoved her away. This was getting real. The bloodthirsty witch had totally lost it. Faced with that kind of power, Elaine was reeling and didn't know what to do. She was in a seriously bad spot. She needed to think fast. Staring death in the face, the girl looked right into her eyes as she suddenly lunged. A sharp pain shot through Elaine's throat, but more importantly, she spotted a magic pendant around the witch's neck. Jumping back, Elaine realized that enchanted necklace was what was making her mom act like this. That's when she decided it was the only way to save her mom, no matter what, even if it cost her everything. Channeling her sword aura, the girl got in close enough to finally snatch that cursed pendant. The witch ran her through right into the heart, but Elaine grabbed the pendant and told Bella to get back. Instantly, the witch's evil eyes were gone. She snapped out of it, but it was too late. The girl had given her life for it. Watching Elaine's lifeless body hit the ground, all Bella could think about was the mess she'd made. This was the hero's destined end, and with her last breath, she begged Bella for forgiveness, saying she was too late. On January 31st, the people of Philion, the capital city, once called the Empire's blessing, committed a terrible sin. Realizing Bella was giving her her heart, the girl tried to understand why and begged her not to do it. Over and over, the girl repeated her name, but the witch vanished with the first breath of wind. Bella blamed only herself for the death of her dear Elaine, but now all she can do is regret. And that's why the witch gave the girl her heart, even though the main character absolutely didn't want it. Maybe Bella doesn't have the right to say this as a goodbye, but she asked Elaine to protect her Rihai. Waking up in her own body, the main character realized she was alive, even though she was sure the witch had run her through. That's when she understood that her mistress really had sacrificed her heart to save her. Searching for an answer to why Bella did it, the pain of loss crushed her inside. The girl had lost her family. Bella was always kind to her, but Elaine wasn't the person she should have saved. Suddenly, the girl remembered the necklace she broke, after which Bella came to her senses. But when Elaine wore it, there were no problems at all. The magic circle drawn on the necklace and her magic, the same kind came out when she got close to the palace. The main character doesn't remember exactly, but it's all pointless now. Even if it cost her everything, Lady Elaine swore she'd find the lowlife who did this to Bella, the one who turned her into this. Maybe someone lured Bella into a trap, someone who needed a witch's heart to live forever. The heroine knew that if the heart was the target, it would have been easier to just take out the witch. She hasn't gone far, but there's no Seal, and Espel, Lloyd, Licht. She doesn't know what happened to those three. The Imperial Palace is gone without a trace. Everything around here is just ruins. To top it all off, Elaine suddenly stumbled upon a pack of monsters in the middle of a quiet field. There weren't this many monsters in the Empire. They probably showed up here because of what happened. Either way, the girl was trying to move stealthily until she saw a huge monster in the sky. This monster-infested shady place is really giving Lady Elaine the creeps. Even though she's wielding a sword, her body feels super light, and she has no idea why she feels so weird. Sword fighting takes serious strength, but right now, young Elaine was more interested in where her mistress got all that mana. Bella trains every single day, but her breathing always stays so even. According to her, it's not unlimited mana, she just uses the absolute minimum. After all, she's a witch, a being that combines human feelings and mana. The human desire to live a long and beautiful life. A witch's heart is made of that energy, and a witch lives forever with that kind of heart. Elaine inherited that kind of power from a witch who seems to have basically infinite mana from the get-go. Arriving in that very village, she planned to find out anything she could. However, her terrifying appearance after slaughtering 1,000 monsters really freaked out the cafe worker. Learning that today was February 5th, Elaine realized she'd been unconscious for 5 days. When she asked about survivors and whether anyone had fled the city to here, her mistress gave her a look like she had no idea what she was talking about. This girl's talking about survivors from the Philion disaster 5 days ago, but nobody here knows anything about it. The heroine was totally stunned when she heard the Philion disaster happened 20 years ago. It looked like she came here looking for survivors from a 20-year-old disaster, and she wasn't even drunk. Elaine was reeling from what she heard, totally convinced it was the year 512. Staring at the murdered maids, Lord Rihai realized she had taken her own life. Confused, the knight wanted orders to continue the search for the killer. The Lord just wants a little break from this work, but there's nothing he can do about it. It's always been like this. Duke Rihai de Fillion Killiard, son of the former Lloyd Fillion, reached master level at 16. People call him the miracle-working lord who resurrected the dying land of Fillion. The Phelan Knights he leads have a great reputation among warriors, but he couldn't hide the fact that he's the son of a... well, you know. The Duke gave the last maid a chance to spill what they were plotting, promising to spare her life in return. Against all odds, Reihi seemed merciful to the crazed girl, especially considering his mother's a real piece of work. How many people bit the dust because of his mother? How many grabbed swords wanting to take Reihi out? He's got to know about this. The Duke's associates offered to bring in some fresh produce, but he turned them down, saying he'd lost his appetite. That nightmare happened 20 years ago. Reihi was just a kid back then. If Esmele or Lloyd were there, then they were probably taken care of by that witch. Feeling like she just didn't want to go on, Elaine went downstairs to grab some water. Hearing this, the lady promised to get her some water right away and asked if she needed anything else. Even though the girl just wanted water, the woman remembered the soup and rushed to bring it to her. During supper, the lady decided to find out if the girl was traveling, since she hadn't seen her around before. Since the Fillion forest was crawling with monsters, not many people came here, meaning the heroine was the only person at the inn. Truth is, the woman was lonely working here. It'd be great if her son came back. Mentioning the Phelan Knights, she said her son left to join them a month ago. But besides that, she was curious where the girl was from, if she didn't know about the local knights. Hearing about an order of knights led by Duke Fillion, the stunned heroine dropped her spoon. The mere thought that it's the witch's son, and that he's alive, made her hands tremble, and hot tears streamed from her eyes. Suddenly, she jumped up from her seat. The more the woman talked to her, the stranger the girl seemed. Right now, Elaine needs to find the Duke, who should be in Killiard, more than anything. Even though there's a monster nest right outside the fortress walls, the castle knights were seriously bored that day. Even if they don't know when the monsters will attack, they find comfort in knowing the Phelan Knights will handle everything. Knowing the knights were out on a mission, Seal said the wall had a barrier. No way monsters could get through. Just then, they heard a weird noise, but the kid figured there's no way monsters could get that close. Since the noise kept up, the guys decided to check it out, and when they looked down, they saw someone. Finally getting their attention, Elaine politely asked them to open the doors. And just like that, she was inside the headquarters of the Empire's second night office. Lovell, the commander's subordinate, figured the girl just came through a monster nest. The lady said, "Yeah," so casually, the worried guy decided to double-check, explaining that what she went through was a monster nest. And she was all alone. Nobody helped her. The Solve Mountains are dangerous enough, but Ramses Mountains are called a monster nest. To get here in a week, Elaine had no choice but to take that route. The Killiard Knights initiation is in 2 days, so she was rushing here to make it on time. This girl was dead set on making it through the Felice Knights selection process. When Lovell found out the entrance exam was the reason for her rush, he said it happens every year. Elaine couldn't tell them the real reason. 20 years had passed and she'd only just woken up. They'd never buy it. Figuring she'd apologize to Rihai later, she said she needed the money and the Phelan Knights pay well. The commander's subordinate had seen plenty of people apply just for the cash. Those types get weeded out right away. But the girl insisted she wasn't just in it for the money. She actually had someone she needed to protect. Either way, looks like Lovell spotted some skills in her, considering she managed to cross that mountain range. The Phelan Knights are way different from regular knights. They're an elite squad, and their job involves a lot of travel. They go to the darkest corners where the toughest monsters live, and they get a serious payout for taking them down. That's why their salary is so high, way more than other knights. Anyone can apply to join the order, but if Elaine bites it protecting the family, her family's gonna be in deep trouble. Even with the lower pay, Lovell suggested she pick a less dangerous job for her family's sake. But this brave warrior woman wanted to protect her family and not kick the bucket, not wanting to go through losing her only family member again. Giving her the choice, the subordinate promised to get a room ready and said he'd escort her to file the application tomorrow. Truth be told, he wasn't sure about crossing the mountain range alone. Something's definitely fishy here. Not knowing if it's luck or skill, Lovell was going to report to the commander tomorrow. Sleep plunged Elaine into memories of better times, back when Rihai played with her hair, blowing in the wind. Then Lloyd stained their whole family paradise, his, unpleasant state stirring her mind and wounding her soul. The girl stopped breathing for a second, when suddenly the ground beneath her feet cracked and started collapsing. Hearing cries for help, she turned and saw the killer threatening her only Bella and her only Rihai. The heroine's heart shattered the instant her family was brutally murdered, just as she reached out to them. Elaine jolted awake in a cold sweat. Reality hit her, and she realized it was just a nightmare. Rihai's still alive. She'll never leave him again. She'll protect him with her own life. And that's the main reason why the heroine decided to start with applications to the Phelan Knights. She filled out the form, hoping they wouldn't forget to add her to the student roster. All this just to see Rihai. He'll be reunited with his sister real soon. But first, he got some unexpected news from his subordinate, Lovell, so the Duke made time for it. Handing over a recruit's application, the subordinate said he'd come through the pass 2 days ago. At first, he couldn't believe it when he was told. He came down from the tower, and there really was a person there. He was lucky to get out of that mountain area, but luck alone doesn't get you out of a place like that. At first, Lovell thought it was a demon, but then he realized it was definitely a human, nothing like a demon at all. And this guy said he wanted to take the Phelan Knights entrance exams, and he wasn't lying. After reviewing the applicant's papers, the Duke laughed and sent his subordinate away. Lady Elaine has applied to join the Order of the Phelan Knights. Rihai Filion hasn't heard that name in ages. Rihai wasn't present for the first and second qualifying trials, so Elaine was very curious to see if she would spot him at the final trial. While pondering this, she noticed another recruit who asked for permission to sit down. He finds it hard to eat alone, plus he's also taking the Phelan Knights exam. Loud shouts erupted behind them. The guys were loudly admiring the awesome dude, Magaff. They say if anyone crosses Magaff's path, they'll be eating dirt. This blue belt proves you survived the Phelan Knights' morning trials. Suddenly, one of Magaff's fanboys noticed the girl sitting nearby also had a blue belt. The guy was furious, figuring a chick like her must have just ripped it off. He thought the Phelan standards must be dirt low if even a girl could pass. Magaff was only here for the paycheck. Everyone else was just weak sauce to him. Elaine ignored guys like them until that jerk called the Duke a half-breed with witch blood. Magaff decided this broad must have put a spell on the Duke because their noble lord was a loser. It's obvious anyway, looking at all these knights. Witch's kid, half-breed, it's a joke. Those words hit the heroine hard. To keep from going off the rails, she demanded Magaff take them back. She wanted him to take back every single thing that lowlife just said. Figuring his words had somehow bruised her pride, the kid pretended he had no idea what she was talking about. Honestly, Elaine couldn't care less what he said to her, but insulting the Duke? That's crossing a line. By defending the witch's son, she caught some serious side-eye, like she's supposed to be cool with people trash-talking the Duke. That's when the girl realized she'd stumbled into a place where everyone hates Rihai. On the day of the night application, after handing in her form, Elaine was about to head out. But then she overheard this woman going off about how disgusting the Phelan Knights are, the ones who follow the witch's son. But the guy, trying to calm her down, reminded her that the witch's son is the head of Filion. That wasn't an excuse for the woman because a witch wiped out her whole family, burned her entire village to the ground in a flash. Without even meaning to, our girl became a witness to just how awful people thought the Duke was, that witch's descendant. All because of that incident, the direct descendant of Bella, while Elaine was asleep for 20 years. If these guys had time to trash-talk others without shame, the newbie suggested they work on themselves for a change. To him, Magaff just looked pathetic, arrogance and all. Those words stung Magaff, so he immediately went for his knife, figuring this kid had a death wish. Lady Elaine stopped him, thinking it wasn't the best idea to use a knife in the dining hall. Sensing some weird power coming from the girl, Magaff decided to explain to her just who he was. Turns out, standing before the heroine was Magaff Iliad, the one and only famous Magaff. Like everyone else, Elaine didn't give a damn who he was, this self-proclaimed Magaff. It's so weird. Hearing that, the young dude went ballistic and lunged at the girl, thinking she was trying to make fun of him. But he didn't know he was attacking someone who could kick his ass in 2 seconds flat with her bare hands. Once that jerk was dealt with, the girl told him to scram if he didn't want to get hurt. That rookie was stoked. Taking down a beast that size? Dude deserves some props. They hadn't officially met yet, so Suzanne made sure to introduce himself properly. Fate brought them together. The kid was hoping they could keep training together, and Elaine was feeling it too. With all the prep work done, the third exam, the one perfect for our girl, was about to kick off. They only picked the rookies who managed to beat all the monsters. Cezanne knew his friend would ace it. Elaine was psyched he made it, but she couldn't spot Reiji anywhere. Before the test started, Commander Lovell's right-hand man was gonna lay down the rules for the soldiers. First off, the order's random. You'll be fighting an examiner inside this circle here. Step outside the circle, touch the line, or get your butt kicked in under a minute, and you're disqualified. Test failed. When the recruits got the green light to ask questions, all Elaine cared about was if the Duke was gonna show up for the exam. Suddenly, everything around her seemed to freeze. She saw before her a man whose voice was so familiar. It was Duke Filion himself, the guy who's grading the test. So he's here. Reassuring herself that this man was Rihai, the heroine didn't even realize how much he'd grown. The leader of the Knights of Feline, Rihai Filion. The students would be fighting against him. He came here as the examiner. Before they started, he told the kids not to sweat it and just show him what they could do. Then Lovell told everyone to wait their turn in the waiting area and called the first contestant, Heather Tage. Eager to battle the Great Duke, the brave Heather immediately charged head-on. No sooner had he snuck up too close to his opponent than the Duke immediately took him down and knocked away his sword. The powerful Duke Rihai is seriously strong. It seemed impossible to last even a minute against him. And so, one by one, the exam participants continued to get weeded out. They were pathetically weak. Finally, Elaine's turn came. The brave girl stepped onto the battlefield without hesitation. Looking Rihai straight in the eye, the heroine couldn't reveal her true self. She crossed the monster's lair alone, fearlessly reached the final exam, so the Duke was sure it was definitely Elaine. Both sides were ready, so the duel began. No one but the two of them knew the story that bound them together. Once, as children, they practiced sparring. Back then, Rihai was too young for it. He was only 3, but he didn't want to wait until he was older, dreaming of being just like his sister. Then Elaine made him promise he'd learn to fence but never draw his sword against his family. For that, Rihai's sister even took responsibility and decided to teach him how to fence. She also vowed to keep her promise, wanting to protect her brother just as he would protect his family. Now, face to face with her brother in battle, she realized she hadn't kept her promise. Growing up without her was the worst thing she could have done to Rihai. When their swords clashed, the determined Duke figured her blade would shatter. But against all odds, she didn't give up hope, and with a surge of strength, knocked his sword aside. She didn't even know what she was doing anymore. There's only so much she can take, less than 20 seconds left, but the question is, can her sword even hold up? With a sword that weak, it looked like she wouldn't last, and neglecting your weapon is a huge mistake. Just like he thought, Elaine's sword was no match for the Duke's weapon. It couldn't take it and snapped. Even so, she desperately kept fighting, refusing to let Rihai crush her spirit. Seeing some serious talent in her, the Duke complimented her and offered her a spot in the Knight's Order. Hearing that she passed the entrance exam, she couldn't contain her excitement. Soon, from all the applicants, only a handful of the very best recruits were chosen to become knights. They all stood before Grand Duke Feline. The Feline Knight ceremony was about to begin. Taking the ceremony seriously, Rihai instructed them to step onto the platform in order, from left to right. Lady Elaine was first in line. The sword was a symbol of justice, and the heart a beacon of mercy. On this day, the girl took an oath of loyalty, courage, and honor, carrying the light of knighthood, preserving her honor and faith. She would have to give her life for Filion, and by her oath, she would be with the king in life and in death. The heroine swore allegiance, wanting to keep her ultimate promise, to protect Rihai. But she couldn't reveal the whole truth now, knowing it would devastate Rihai to realize that Bella's heart belonged to her. Elaine vowed to keep this secret locked away in her heart, forever hidden deep inside. The one and only Bella and her precious Rihai, her ladyship's new life would belong to him. Now that it was all over, it was time for introductions. First, the deputy commander decided to present himself. One of the Feline Knights, Lord Lovell, is the Duke's aide-de-camp. Next to him is another of the Duke's deputies, Hilla Rister. The Feline Knight's main mission is monster-related. Knights are chosen based on the difficulty and nature of the threats. They aim to subdue the monsters and fulfill the kingdom's requests. Since the position of Duke's escort has been vacant for a while, they're now accepting applications for the role. Apparently, it'll be tough for the rookies. Just like Lovell figured, no one wanted it. But then, a hand in a white glove suddenly appeared from the crowd, like a symbol of courage and nobility. Among all the applicants, Lady Elaine desired to become an escort knight. Like a true knight, she lives life on the edge. Whispers immediately broke out in the crowd. The knights who stayed back thought this woman was out there. The girl wasn't expecting that kind of reaction at all. After all, these knights are at the head of Rihai. Just when she'd resigned herself to the fact that meeting them was a total bust, the Night Lady recognized her as Elaine for sure. After the ceremony, Cézanne couldn't believe the girl decided to tag along with the Duke, not knowing what kind of job that is. But she didn't think it was weird that Sir Phelan the Knight was escorting the captain. Mid-conversation, a woman's voice cut through, and the girl realized it was Sir Cézanne Weston's lady. Happy to see him, Sophia Rossley pointed out she was a year older but completely iced Elaine out. When Sophia started grilling them about what they were doing and if anything was going on, Elaine decided to bounce. Claiming the deputy captain was calling her, the main character planned to head out first. Stepping outside, she saw snow and was stoked by the first snow she'd seen since waking up. Suddenly, the girl noticed a horse wandering nearby, and even though it was kinda odd, she decided to pet it. Right then, along with the first snow, the Duke showed up, and it was the first time he'd ever seen Nikki let anyone touch him. The boss remembered Elaine and heard she decided to become his escort knight. It seemed funny that he was talking about it, until he said the girl was better off leaving. All his escort knights died protecting him from assassins, and whether it's a miracle or not, Rihai was sure she'd lose her life here. Hearing that, Elaine couldn't understand what had happened to him all this time. After all, the Phelan Knights are the strongest, and up until now, the girl knew nothing about the slain knights. Looking at Milady's desire to protect the Duke, Rahi found it amusing how she could be so sure she wouldn't die. She'd already sworn an oath to him, placing her life in his hands, and she's not one to go down easy. In that case, Elaine was allowed to stay. She was so happy, almost like she was happy about the possibility of dying at any moment. Her courage knows no fear, and her determination no obstacles. Like a true knight, she'll die protecting her captain. Master Rihai didn't get it. In any case, he went back to his place, saying goodbye until tomorrow. That's when Milady finally understood how tough it had been for him alone. She'd never leave his side again. The Duke thought it was weird how this girl jumped at the chance to protect him. And just like that, it was the heroine's first day on the job as an escort knight. Now dreaming of staying with Rihai, she couldn't wait to see him. But as soon as she got to his office, she saw the door was open and could hear angry voices inside. Elaine was sure they were yelling her name, and she didn't get why they were screaming so early. Understanding how Sophia felt, the Duke's aide said that everything was already decided for her. Lord Lovell turned her down, said she wasn't right for the role, and decided to take this woman as his escort knight. Sophia was furious that they didn't like her, so she decided to walk out in the middle of the conversation. Bursting out of the office, she bumped into the very girl who took her place. She totally hates her. Lady Rossley couldn't take the humiliation anymore. She shoved the girl aside and bolted. Seeing the vice captain looking all stressed out, Elaine immediately wanted to know what was up. This isn't the place to talk about it, so Lovell suggested they discuss it on the way to the office. The Lord was worried Sophia had been too rough, but Elaine's fine. Just a little bump on the head. Besides, Lady Rossley also applied to be a knight escort. She joined them last year. Back then, the commander turned her down, and Sophia eventually gave up. But this year, when Elaine got the position, Rossley thought it was totally unfair to her. So, there's someone out there who genuinely wants to protect Rihi. The heroine's glad that not everyone hates him. Soon they arrived at the main office. A subordinate knocked on the door and announced that he'd brought Elaine. Since there was no answer, Lovell opened the door, but it was completely empty inside. Figured the commander was off training, so the lady got the green light to wait for him in his office. After checking out Rihai's workspace, she suddenly spotted a sword she recognized from somewhere. Back in her past life, Elaine went to a blacksmith to get a special design engraved on a sword. She had the engraving done in a really obvious spot, wanting to give the sword to Rihai for his birthday. She couldn't give it to her brother back then. He was too young for a sword like that. He needed to grow into it. The fact that the sword was supposed to be completed when the branch was destroyed made Elaine realize Rihai had found it. Just then she sensed someone behind her, and the Duke was furious, wanting to know what she was up to. Rihai immediately drew his combat sword because nobody messes with his stuff without permission. Thinking fast about what to do, the girl bowed and said she was just being careless. Looks like the Duke was seriously ticked off, but he didn't do anything, deciding to leave first. Worried about the lady, Lovell rushed over, saying he should have warned her sooner. Thinking about it, it was clear why Rihi got angry. To him, this girl's just some random person. Not sure about the rest, the Duke's subordinate warned her not to touch that sword. Elaine stopped breathing when she heard that. She didn't know the sword was the Crown Prince's most prized possession. Lord Lovell doesn't know all the details either. The heir always carries the sword like a good luck charm. Anyway, they need to head out. His Highness is doing a patrol, so he'll be at the front door. But right then, the girl was just happy that Rihi liked the sword she'd carefully prepared. Rihist first met his weapon on a totally normal day when Walter suddenly brought him something. Seeing the precious engraved sword in the fancy box, the boy didn't get what was going on at first. Turns out Walter met a guy at the fortress gates who said he was the grandson of the blacksmith who forged the sword. This guy asked the knight to deliver this sword to young Master Raister. Hearing that, the kid wanted to know if Walter knew him, knew what he believed in, and why he showed him this. Actually, the knight was meeting him for the first time, but the guy said this sword was forged on Elaine's orders. That day, Register learned for the first time that his mother, that woman, came from a seriously powerful family. Since the young master doesn't like to talk about his mother, his subordinate never told him anything. Before he could even find out who Elaine was, he said he'd listen to the Lord and then judge for himself. The only thing he wanted to know was where that blacksmith was now. Turns out the blacksmith was on his deathbed, but he said Elaine went to Seneca, but never came back for the sword. Maybe she got caught up in whatever went down in Seneca, which is why the old man waited until the sword was ready. As you can see, he didn't have long left in this world, so he wanted to find this kid. Lucky for us, even though it was late, the gift finally found its owner. Walter once said that Rihi grew up surrounded by love when he was a kid. Even though he doesn't remember that time, he couldn't give away that sword Elaine left him. Soon, with all the knights assembled, Lord Rihi was about to explain today's patrol route. Lately, the number of outsiders has increased because of the exams, and we've been getting reports of accidents and crimes. So today, the Duke is personally patrolling the area, sending half the group north and the rest with him. As expected, the Lord is carrying the gifted sword with him, and it suits Rihi perfectly. As soon as the night squad set off to patrol the city, Elaine realized her worries were unfounded. Everyone seemed to be in good spirits, and as expected, the locals are grateful to Rihi. Suddenly, a little girl, a local, called out to her, holding out a bag of cookies for the Duke. Not knowing what to do, the heroine asked the Duke for advice, and Rihi asked to take them, planning to eat them later. Elaine was so grateful and happily accepted the gift, confident that His Majesty would love it. Everyone was so distracted by the little girl that they didn't even notice the nasty old man appear out of nowhere. Elaine barely had time to warn the Duke about the danger behind them when the old man dumped a whole bucket of water on them. At the very last moment, like a true bodyguard, the brave girl took the brunt of the water. She was soaked to the bone, but right now the commander's safety was all that mattered. For threatening His Majesty's life and intentionally causing harm, the criminal was immediately apprehended. Nobody messes with the Duke like that, so the knights grabbed him and tied his hands. Because of the Duke's freaking mother, his grandkids died. They weren't even 5 years old, so the old man didn't understand why Rihi was still alive. Realizing the family of the deceased died during the incident at Seneca, Elaine was convinced it wasn't Bella's fault. Since Rihi could have totally avoided this, he decided to find out why the girl did something so reckless. First, he ordered a knight to take Lady Elaine to a place to rest so she could wash up and dry off. Right then, the angry old man accused the Duke of using his people as human shields. In his eyes, Rihi was just as bad as a witch, but His Highness wasn't about to listen to that. The cold-blooded Duke told him he should be grateful he wasn't having his throat slit right then and there. The Lord immediately gave the order to take that old man away and throw him in the slammer. Then, in the silence of the city, you could hear the criminal's desperate screams. It seemed like everyone knew Rihi's mother's dirty secrets. The fact that he's alive is a sin in itself, but the Duke doesn't care about these words thrown like daggers. For some reason, thinking about the moment Elaine saved him just rubbed him the wrong way. The number of people has thinned out enough, so he decreed that patrols would continue tomorrow. The old man wasn't lying. Everyone knows the Duchess's sins, like her being related to a witch. But it's also true that he brought this street back to life. Either way, Rihi was sure of one thing: his existence wasn't a mistake. The rumors about Elaine getting soaked instead of the Duke spread fast, and they reached Cézanne. He was so worried about her that he went on the attack, but she insisted she was fine. Even though she's just an attendant, Cézanne couldn't understand why she'd risk her life like that. If it had been boiling water or poison, Elaine wouldn't have just been left speechless. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that she's hurt or sick, but she figured it would hurt His Highness even more if he got injured. After saying that, the heroine decided to leave first. Her job wasn't done yet. Elaine changed and went into the Duke's office, apologizing for taking longer than she expected. Reihi had just arrived himself, so it wasn't a big deal. What he really wanted to know, though, was why this girl was so dedicated. Hearing that she was an attendant, the Duke realized he shouldn't have asked such a dumb question. He seemed to suspect what was happening to him. He was wearing his heart on his sleeve way too much. Lord Fillion was so lost in thought that he didn't notice he'd spilled ink all over the desk. Seeing the girl's worried face, he told her not to fuss, he'd just rewrite the documents. But it wasn't about the papers. Reihi had gotten ink all over his hand. Not afraid of getting dirty, the girl took his hand to wipe it with her handkerchief. It made her think back to when Reihi was a kid. He used to catch colds all the time. Elaine had no choice but to carry that handkerchief around with her all the time. She figured now that he's grown, she'd finally get a chance to use it, but she was dead wrong. Like the Duke pointed out, the handkerchief's useless now, but that's exactly what it's for. Once everything was set, Milady advised him to clean up the remaining stain with plain water. Feeling seriously weirded out, Reihi felt like he was being treated like a kid for the first time. After that, things were quiet for a few days, and our girl just watched Rehist work. Until one day, something happened that nobody saw coming. That day, after thanking his attendant for doing a good job, the Duke said his goodbyes until tomorrow. Thankfully, nothing out of the ordinary happened today, either. Elaine was hoping things would just keep going smoothly, without any incidents. She was convinced everything would be fine, until she ran into a terrified maid in the hallway. The girl recognized Lady Elaine's attendant. She was totally freaked out and begged for help. Turns out there was this creepy noise coming from the other wing, so the maid suggested they go check it out together. When Milady agreed, the maid's panic instantly turned into this over-the-top glee, like she'd been expecting it all along. The sound was seriously ominous, so our girl had no clue what the heck was going on. As soon as they rounded the corner, Elaine felt the strike of a sword, but luckily, her reflexes let her block it just in time. Sensing danger, the maid started shaking like a leaf and stayed glued to her mistress's back. Elaine couldn't believe that when she came here, she would be ambushed by a whole squad of people. These are hired guns. Before our girl could even get ready to fight, the assassins started attacking with throwing knives. She fought back with everything she had, but the enemy's assault was just too relentless. Seeing the master's sword in enemy hands, no way there's a master among these mercs. Whoever can wield that thing has got to be seriously strong. They're probably after Reihi. Like a scorching wind tearing through everything, the warrior maiden blew through them, a total pro with that sword. In just a few seconds, she took down all the mercs except for one, leaving him totally stunned. The masked kid couldn't believe his eyes. He was sure she'd just joined the order. Only way to shut up an enemy is to stab him, so Elaine went for a shot under his ribs. She was gonna let him live, 'cause she needed to find out who was pulling the strings. Thinking things were cool for the moment, she suddenly heard a weird noise coming from somewhere else. She bolted, running without looking. The second she realized the sound was coming from Reihi's room. By the time Elaine burst into his study, the maid was about to off the Duke like a total traitor. Duty-bound to protect her captain, the brave lady charged in and took down that nasty maid. That's when it became clear the maid was in on it, but the main thing is, the Duke's safe now. Reihi claimed mercs broke into that room too, and then the attendant noticed bloodstains on his clothes. He's actually fine, and besides, it's not even his blood. Lovell showed up out of nowhere, totally confused by the scene. This was a new one for him. You could tell he was seriously bummed that, after a month since the last attempt, this crap was happening again. So, addressing His Highness and Lady Elaine, the Lord thought it would be best to shuffle things around a bit. It might seem kinda sudden, but he suggested moving Elaine's residence to the room next door. Hearing that, the girl was totally stoked, but the Duke definitely wasn't expecting that. Just like you'd expect, despite Reihi's grumbling, she was ready to move right then and there, taking full responsibility. Still, this is pretty out of left field for His Highness, but talking about protocol feels weird right now. Lord Lovell says the Duke's guard knights are down, and we gotta do something fast, 'cause he's still in danger. Rehist thought they were in on something together, and he couldn't even believe Milady wanted to switch rooms that bad. Since she really wanted it, the master let them do whatever they wanted. It'd be awesome to just run and pack, but first we gotta clean up this hall. That night, when the mercenary finally came to, the Duke was about to take off his gag. The kid felt like crap, and first wanted to know how many days he'd been locked up. Rihai was shocked when he heard it hadn't even been an hour. Turns out that woman was so strong, the mercenary thought he'd been out for days. After hearing from the attendant that the kid had reached master level, the Duke wanted to know who ordered him to do this. The killer was sure the boss was just playing dumb, even though he knows damn well how many masters are on this continent. Truth is, Mr. Fillion's testing a theory, seeing if this kid will betray the guy who hired him. If this lowlife bites his tongue and kicks the bucket right now, the Duke won't say another word, giving him a chance to choose his own way out. But if he confesses, Rihai will forget this whole attack ever happened. Doubting it was true, the mercenary figured this guy was just trying to get a confession before offing him. But that means the Duke will keep him alive, at least until he spills the beans. Wanting to get out of this trap more than anything, even if it's risky, the kid agreed to tell everything. That's when blood splattered his face, a sharp pain shot through him, and he saw the tip of a shoe jammed into his throat. That's messed up. The maid couldn't believe her partner fell for the enemy's line. That's exactly why she thought they shouldn't use masters who are only in it for the cash. The guy she works for never saw that kind of betrayal coming, so he put together a hit squad. The squad's just made up of people who hate the Duke, a temporary force bought and paid for. Plenty of folks hate Rihai and want him dead. He can't beat their boss, even if he gathers up traitors like these. Right after that, the maid swallowed the poison she was hiding in her cheek. Now everyone involved is dead. Rihai figured it was pointless to find out who was behind it. He just thought it was messed up. Finally packing all her stuff, Lady Elaine wanted to double-check she hadn't forgotten anything. Just the thought of living next door to Rihai made her happy. Hoping he'd be safe, she suddenly ran into Cezanne on the way. He heard about what went down last night. They're saying it was mercenaries, so he was worried everything was okay. He was so relieved to hear Elaine was all right. Cezanne's been looking out for her ever since she became an attendant. Out of nowhere, this woman pops up in the crowd near the notice board, and she recognizes Lady Elaine. According to Sophia, even after a rough day, Milady looks pretty refreshed. She was also hoping to accompany the Duke after the training camp trip, which was news to our girl. Cezanne said a notice came about a 3-day training exercise. The Knights of Feline always do this time of year. Lady Sophia, thinking the Duke's got a lot on his plate, was worried something bad might happen if his escort couldn't handle it. She wasn't saying Lady Elaine was incompetent, just that she was afraid something like yesterday might happen again. Miss Rossley chimed in, saying Lady Elaine is the escort His Majesty himself approves of. Hearing that, our heroine couldn't believe Lady Sophia thought so highly of her. In that case, she promised to work even harder from now on to protect His Highness. Thinking this woman was super weird, Sophie suggested they meet up at the camp. She's been keeping tabs on Elaine since day one, seeing how she handles her escort duties. Since Lady Rossley thinks so highly of her, our girl decided she needs to work even harder for Rihai. She knocked on the office door, but no one answered, and it was totally empty inside. She needed to get the keys from the Duke to get into her new room, so she decided to wait for him. It struck her as weird that he was late, 'cause that never happened before. Just in case, she decided to head to the room, but noticed the door was already open. Elaine's mind immediately jumped to the worst-case scenarios like, bad stuff always happening, it could happen again. Afraid it was going down again, she threw open the door and charged in, yelling her head off. But then she saw the hunk Rihai, shirtless and all. Guess her plan worked a little too well. Feeling a crazy rush of something, a flustered Elaine bolted out of the Duke's bedroom. Just like clockwork, she suddenly slipped and almost ate it, but Rihai caught her just in time. When their eyes met, the master caught that look again, the one full of complicated feelings. Blaming it all on her worry, the girl bolted and actually shut the door behind her this time. Lady Elaine's lost her mind, barging in like that no matter how worried she is. Rihai's a grown-ass man now, 23, which means it's time to settle down, get hitched. The heroine couldn't picture it, maybe 'cause she's used to little Rihai. Someday someone's gonna be his sweetheart, and whoever it is, she just hopes he's happy. Right then, the Duke peeked out from behind the door, already dressed. He figured she came for the keys. So Milady apologized for what happened, for not knocking before she came into the room. Rihai was actually surprised, but he knew she didn't mean anything by it, so it's all good. When he found out Elaine left all her stuff in his office, the Duke suggested they go get it. She was thinking about asking why he was late, but decided it would be too much. As if reading her mind, Rihi said he overslept. No surprise there, since Elaine kept glancing at him, looking like she wanted to ask something. The thought that he overslept being weird made His Majesty smile, which was a first. Truth is, he had nightmares, woke up a little later than usual, and was late because he was showering. The fact that he was sweating meant he had a terrible nightmare, one he's been having for a while now. At that point, he suggested they end the conversation and get to moving her things. But even then, Elaine couldn't shake the thought that he was having the same nightmare over and over. The Duke didn't give details, but the dream must be connected to the Seneca incident. If it's that awful, it's better off forgotten. The girl figured she needed to find some herbs to help him sleep better. From now on, she wanted to look after him. A few days later, with all the preparations done, it was time for the Feline Knights to hit the road. On February 22nd, the Feline Knights left Killiard for a 3-day training exercise. They'd been hiking for 3 hours, but hadn't reached their destination. Cezanne was clearly already wiped. In that case, Abel, who'd joined the service at the same time, couldn't figure out how he'd become a master with stamina like that. Suddenly, the squad stopped. They'd finally arrived, even though it just looked like a small path in the thick of the woods. Actually, there was a cliff with a waterfall right in front of them. Their camp was at the top of the waterfall. Not only did they still have a long way to go, but from this point on, the guys were going to have to climb the cliff. And the 7 who got there last, by order of the Duke, were going for a swim. Immediately, the Files Knight squad bolted towards the cliff. Not looking back to save time, Elaine ran after them. But then, she just froze in the middle of the crowd, like she caught a glimpse of something. Seeing her standing there like a statue, Cezanne grabbed her hand and told her to haul ass. Thinking she was just seeing things, she took off running, but her eyes definitely weren't playing tricks on her. Looks like the rookies got creamed again. They had no clue they were in for a surprise drill like this. But hey, looks like there are a few interesting cats in the bunch. Those 2 made it here pretty damn quick. Just looking at that water gave Cezanne the chills. He's majorly relieved they got here when they did. Elaine wasn't sure what place she got. She wasn't really paying attention to that. She could have totally smoked everyone if she'd used her skills, but right now, it's better to lay low. Abel, who'd already felt the pain, noticed how lucky Cezanne was. He made it in time and won't have to take the plunge. From the jump, Sir Weston told him to take the mountain path. He knew right away it was that rookie climbing the cliff solo. Since the young master's doing so well, Abel figured he'd give him a little taste of the action too. The fact that he got here first and didn't have to get wet just made Cezanne absolutely livid. The knight's laughter suddenly died down. You could feel this unholy power in the air, and then this huge monster lumbered out of the thick woods. Standing face to face with the mighty Turhan, the Duke ordered everyone to draw their blades. Elaine was the only one who thought it was weird that a monster that lives in warm climates would show up in such a cold place. Deciding to charge, the Duke ordered only the 5 in front to cover him and the rest to hang back and wait. Just as Reggie was about to charge, a knight blocked his path, begging him to stop. Insisting that the monster couldn't be killed, the young man warned him he'd be in deep trouble. The desperate knight stood right in front of the monster, even though it was dangerous and everyone was yelling at him to get out of there. The monster was right behind him, but he couldn't move. If he did, the others would kill it. Even if it meant getting chewed out by the commander, the kid wasn't budging, saying he couldn't. Right then, the enraged monster slammed its fist into the ground where the guy was standing, and the earth beneath his feet shattered. As Rihai was racking his brain for what to do, he suddenly spotted Lady Elaine rushing towards him, clearly freaked out. As his attendant, she was worried, but the Duke was fine, and besides, he told her not to make a scene. Honestly, this kid shouldn't even have raised any red flags. He's just a regular mage, even if everyone got the wrong idea about him. With a snap of his fingers, the young sorcerer seemed to banish the monster to another dimension. Then he let out a sigh of relief. But he shouldn't have thought the Duke would let him off that easy. To keep him from running, Rihai pressed his sword to the kid's throat. Pushing the blade deeper into his skin, His Highness demanded to know where the youth had sent Tirhan. Under pressure, the mage had to admit he'd sent the monster to his lab in the woods, where he does his experiments. Knowing the rumors that all wizards are a little off, the Duke decided to find out if this one was dabbling in things he shouldn't. The wizard swore it was impossible, and he was even ready to prove it. Seeing the badge in his hands, Rihai instantly knew this guy was from Halon. It's issued by the Royal Academy of Magic in Halon, a special badge for senior graduates. His name, Nathan, is engraved on the back of the badge. That's solid proof he's legit. But the Duke figured the only way to verify if that's really his name is to check with Halon itself. Since proving it would be tough right now, Nathan used his magic to bail out of there. Panicked, Master Rihai tried to stop him, but it was too late. The mage had already teleported, and even though Elaine was ready to chase after him, the Duke ordered her to forget it, planning to just contact the academy. Besides, it'll be dark soon. Before then, the squad needs to get 3 days' worth of food and be back here before sunset. If the guys did their math right, they were back by nightfall, managing to snag some meat for dinner. The whole point of this training camp is to teach the recruits to adapt to anything. Plus, by building connections here, the newbies can break down the barriers between the veterans and the rest of us. The commander's just hoping everyone gets it and supports the new guys. When it was finally dinner time, Elaine turned to him and offered him some meat. Afraid the Duke would have trouble with the big leg because of the bones, she grabbed a smaller one just in case. What Lady Elaine was doing right now seemed totally insane to the whole team. Watching her, a furious Sophia couldn't believe she was treating His Highness like a baby. Insisting he's not a kid anymore, Rihai told his attendant to eat it herself. The heroine had to silently accept that the Duke was all grown up. Thinking about it, Elaine was sure that the magic user they saw earlier that day was the head of the Halon Royal Academy. 20 years back, this was a top-tier magic academy. Half the wizards in the Elaine Kingdom graduated from here. That's when it hit her. Someone from Halon might know something about what went down in Seneca. They all took the same training after all. Maybe this mysterious sorcerer even knows about this magic pearl. Late at night, after everyone was asleep, our girl decided to bail before the night watch showed up. Watching this chick closely, Sophie was seriously wondering where the heck she was going at this hour. On the way, Elaine kept thinking about how Nathan's teleportation trail was confirmed during the hunt. She didn't even finish that thought before she slammed on the brakes. A cliff was right in front of her. Just a few hours ago, things were different here. The trail just ends in this spot. To test it, she tossed some pebbles down, but she totally froze when she saw them floating on the surface of the cliff. Just like she figured, it's just an illusion, a well-crafted space that's morphing into a cave right before her eyes. Turns out, the results of the experiment are closely intertwined. According to the theory of human-monster relationships, Nathan only needed Sachiran. Elaine showing up was a total surprise. The wizard almost forgot how to breathe when he saw her. He freaked out at first, but then he noticed a shape that looked familiar. The sorcerer couldn't figure out how the girl, who wanted to off his turthin, found this place, but Elaine insisted she wasn't going to hurt him. And even though she came here on personal business, Nathan didn't have time to get sidetracked from his research. In that case, the heroine dared to guess that he was busy with the turthin she'd seen earlier that day. Actually, the wizard's research is almost done, but he's missing just one piece. Elaine immediately realized he was missing Sachiran. She'd already heard the mage muttering it to himself when she came in. Anyway, the question is, will the sorcerer get down to business with Milady if she gets him that item? A Sachiran is a flower that blooms for a fleeting moment after a fairy's blessed rain. It's so rare you can't buy it with money. Hearing that Elaine knew where it grew, Nathan was ready to do anything to find out its location. Since Nathan hadn't accepted the offer yet, the girl said the location couldn't be shown on a map or have directions explained. It's convenient for her now that she used to travel with Bella, not knowing she'd have to look for a Sachiran. The mage had no other way to get the Sachiran except to trust her. Doing it alone would take him many years. Just to get the missing element, the wizard agreed to the deal. However, he became curious why the girl came here if she could ask for a magic tower instead. According to Elaine, working with the magic tower is complicated and time-consuming, and she's in a hurry. So she asked him to remember that. The fact that she was here, the mage shouldn't reveal to anyone. And one more thing, as a final request, Milady asked him to investigate something that was so important to her. Just in case, Sophia followed her, but she had no idea how far Elaine had gone. She figured she had to check out what that girl was up to and report back to His Highness. While trying to find the girl, Lady Rossley stumbled upon a mysterious cave, and it raised even more questions in her mind. The heroine never thought that Nathan, who she met by chance, would turn out to be so helpful. Seeing her at the entrance, Sophia now realized that she had been here all along. Elaine's movements seemed suspicious, so Lady Rossley followed her and demanded an explanation. Sophia thought it was weird that the Duke's attendant would just up and leave camp in the middle of the night. It doesn't take a genius to figure out there must be something inside that cave. The heroine knew if she got caught talking to Nathan and Rahester found out about it, she'd be in deep trouble. The moment Sophia decided to go inside, it was like she got electrocuted and thrown backwards. It was clear as day. The illusion magic had faded and turned into a freaking magical barrier. Facing something totally out of left field, Sophia demanded to know what the hell they were up to and what they were hiding. As the Duke's escort, the girl couldn't spill the beans. She was under orders to keep things hush-hush. Even though it's a fib, Lady Sophia's a hardcore follower of the Duke, so she won't dig any deeper. So Elaine told her to cut the crap and head back to camp, 'cause she ain't gonna win nothing chasing after this. But to Lady Rossley, it looks like they're trying to strong-arm her, hiding behind His Highness. The fact that His Highness lets this girl tag along doesn't change a damn thing for her. Claiming the Duke hates her, Sophia told the girl to know her place, since she was playing that role just last night. Like she realized she was beat, Rossley bailed, leaving Elaine alone to stew about Rihai hating her. 2 days later, after morning roll call, the main character got orders to gather 30 people for a meetup. She wanted to help the Duke, but remembering Sophia's words, she decided to ask if she was getting on his nerves. She was just curious if Rehi was feeling awkward around her. The Duke barely got the words out that he wasn't tired of her when Elaine happily snuggled up to him. It's a huge relief for her because she was worried he actually couldn't stand her. Anyway, they need to get ready to leave now. So after finishing their 3-day training, the Velen Knights returned to Killiard, and 2 days later they received a message. The message, sent from the county of Wallendorf, requested an investigation into a disappearance on the estate. At the Wallendorf County estate, the knights were greeted kindly by Count Wallendorf himself. He'd been waiting for them. He asked for help, but he never expected His Grace to come in person. It's their first meeting since the birthday. Extending his hand to greet him, the Count openly displayed a ring on his finger, which made the Duke tense up. After several people went missing from this estate, the Earl finally asked for help 15 days later. He obviously ignored the missing persons reports because the people who vanished were just commoners. But now he's asking for help because his pet cat went missing? That's messed up. The number of missing people doubled because the Earl waited too long to call in the knights. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been a big deal. Of course, Sir Filion was going to find Beatrice, but finding the missing people comes first. First thing he did was ask them to show him a map of the eastern forest everyone's talking about. According to the villagers, a farmer working near the eastern forest suddenly stopped what he was doing. He just stood up straight and walked into the woods like he was possessed. He's still missing. That's when the Duke warned us it could be a monster that messes with your head, like it's hypnotizing you. Judging by the map, people went missing in 3 places: by the lake, at the villa, and at the riding grounds. Since we have no clue where the monster might be, Filion suggested we split into 3 groups. He and Elaine will head to the lake. The rest of you split in half, 3 to the villa, the others to the riding grounds. Probably won't need it, but if things go south, the Duke said we can use the red signal flare. If the knights see the signal, they gotta haul ass over there and help whoever needs it. We only had 1 monster during training camp, but Elaine was worried about how many there'd be this time. She didn't want Rihai getting hurt. He told her not to sweat it, but she just didn't want him in danger. But he'd made up his mind. His sister couldn't protect him for 20 years, so she decided to stay out of it now too. All she can do is watch his back and support him. It's for his own good, after all. Suddenly, the wind shifted, and the heroes heard a song that started messing with their heads. Right as Rihai ordered everyone to magically block their ears, a bunch of magical forest critters surrounded them. Elaine knew right away it was Lamia, the one behind all the disappearances. Lamia's a monster who can sing hypnotic songs in a snake language, charming people with her voice. Bearing his sword, fearless Asher got ready to fight back-to-back with Elaine. Gotta wipe 'em all out. Fighting as one, the heroes gave it everything they had to deal with the bloodthirsty monsters. There were a lot of these creatures, but they weren't too strong, so taking them down was easy enough. Just when things seemed okay, a red flare suddenly shot up in the distance. Elsewhere, facing an unbelievably huge monster, the knights couldn't figure out what it was. Their enemy is Lycos, a snake-type monster of the highest level. Guess his hibernation got interrupted, forcing him to come out. Cézanne never expected to run into him this time of year. No matter how strong they are, this monster is way out of their league. But one of the girls on the team suggested we bail quietly and link up with His Highness to call for backup. Just then we heard a hiss coming from the woods. Cézanne got all worried and stared into the thicket, expecting something nasty. Lamia surrounded the heroes, a whole bunch of bloodthirsty fanged monsters that could mess with their minds. It wasn't until the big, bad Licious rose up from the ground that the knights realized they were in deep trouble. Seeing Licious on the way to help, Elaine immediately understood why the guys used the flare. Even when help finally arrived, the team members hadn't given up hope, desperately climbing onto the snake to try and take him down. First, we gotta take care of the wounded. It looked like Sir Cézanne wasn't even gonna be able to report the situation. With his last bit of strength, he explained that they'd run into Lamius and Licious at the riding grounds, and thanks to the flare, the knights joined them. But all 6 of them, including Cézanne, are seriously injured, and 2 knights are out of commission. There are no survivors left at the riding grounds, but after subduing the Lamias, several people managed to take shelter at the villa. The Duke says Lycios can regenerate. He'll keep healing until we destroy the core inside him. Sir Filion couldn't pinpoint the exact location, so he figured we'd have to cut him into pieces. Leaving Lady Elaine to protect the wounded, the brave Duke dove headfirst right into the monster's clutches. Through the shredded skin, he managed to find the core inside the creature, which was the Duke's target all along. Feeling unbearable pain from the blow, Lycios thrashed wildly and charged straight toward the people. Desperate and following her captain's orders, the brave Elaine drew her sword and shielded the wounded with her body. But in that fateful moment, she saw a savior. Rihai threw himself in front of her, right into the monster's jaws. In that instant, a massive explosion engulfed the battlefield. The knights were hit with a wave of dust and intense pressure. Opening her eyes, Sophia saw the Duke alive and well, and immediately wondered about Lycios. By then, Lady Elaine had already gotten to work, hacking the monster to bits, piece by piece. She almost got into serious trouble. If she hadn't forced him back, Lycios would have definitely devoured Rihai. Suddenly, the monster screamed in pain and started slithering away into the thicket. That's when our girl knew she couldn't let it get away. Just as she was about to chase after it, she heard a shout. Cerulean collapsed, out cold. Panicked and not knowing what to do, the girl started shaking him, trying to get him to wake up. Seeing the deep wound on his arm, Elaine realized Lycios had wounded the Duke and his venom would spread. With his last bit of strength, Rihai tried to say he was okay, but he couldn't fight what was happening to him. Tears streamed down the girl's face. In that moment, she remembered Bella dying in her arms the same way. Luckily, the Duke was rushed to the mansion, but Lycios's poison needs to be neutralized with a special antidote. But it's so rare that it'll take at least 10 days to get our hands on it. Lady Elaine couldn't wait 10 days with the commander's life on the line. She had to find another way. So, the doc suggested we brew the cure ourselves, but we're missing a couple of key ingredients. We need freshly dug rain licorice and the heart of a Lycios to make the antidote. When the crew heard that, Sophia wanted to head out right away. Using the core, finding the monster would be easier. But Cézanne thought that was too much, seeing as almost everyone's seriously banged up and nearly out of mana. If they go back into the forest like this, they're toast. That's definitely not going to save His Majesty. Since it's nighttime and the knights haven't recovered, Lady Elaine decided to grab the rain licorice first. Knowing what it looks like and being uninjured, our girl was sure she could handle it. Since no one objected, they put their faith in Elaine, and the rest decided to head to the recovery ward. Looking at Reha''s terrible condition, the girl told herself again that she'd find both the licorice and the Lycios heart. She's the only one who can save the Duke right now. Suddenly, the girl felt the master grab her hand. Reha didn't want her to leave him alone again. In his dying state, his only wish was that the lady wouldn't go. Hoping that he would wait for her, Elaine left. She was definitely going to save him and not leave him alone. Meanwhile, Sophia was a little worried, knowing that the Duke's condition had improved slightly. However, when she entered his ward, she saw the commander in terrible condition, with blood coming from his mouth. Thinking about what to do, Sophia couldn't just let things be. She thought about calling the doctor. The doctor said there was nothing that could be done. In the end, they had to use the antidote. The heart of Lycios. She decided to get it right now, because if this continued, the Duke could die. Sophia couldn't doubt her own strength, remembering that Rihi had saved her life twice. Knowing the core's location, she wanted to aim for the weak spot and thrust her sword right into the core to knock it out in an instant. Likio slithered away from the riding grounds, so he's got to be close by. Hearing a rustle, she peeked through the bushes and saw the massive neck of a high-tier monster. When she saw Lamia in its teeth, she realized it was devouring its own kind, and the thought made her sick to her stomach. Lady Rossley tried with all her might to convince herself that she wasn't scared and couldn't just run away like that. Gaining courage, she gathered all her energy through the sword and struck right at the core. It seemed impossible, but the core actually appeared through the monster's thick hide. Sophia was so caught up in her little victory that she didn't notice the monster's movement and took a brutal hit to the back. With intense pain and blood, she fell to the ground, and the merciless Likios, from whom there was no escape, loomed over her. His wound had already closed, though it's obvious that regeneration can't be that fast. Sophia had declared so loudly that she would protect her captain, but now she considered herself pathetic. It looked like game over until Lady Elaine showed up out of nowhere, slamming all her power into the monster's core. Her strength is unmatched, and her fierce desire to help her brother fuels this warrior maiden. Watching her fearlessness, Sophia couldn't believe her eyes, and didn't understand how Elaine got there. It seemed like a straight-up miracle when the Duke's attendant just shanked the monster in the neck. After landing that critical hit, the hero finally exhaled. She'd finally found Lycaos's core. Suddenly, Elaine noticed Lady Sophia and wanted to know how she got there and if she was hurt. But that's not the main issue right now. The thing is, His Highness's condition has gotten worse. Feeling incredibly useless, Lady Rossley let Elaine go out of desperation, planning to follow her later. She came all this way, said she was going to save His Highness, and then got messed up this bad. But the Duke's attendant told the girl to climb on her back. There's no way she can walk normally with an injury like that. Right then, Rihai was lost in his own head, totally out of it, not even knowing where he was. He felt like he was floating, but then he realized it was water when he heard someone laughing. The Duke felt like a total fool, stuck in the water, and these snot-nosed kids were saying he looked like a drowned rat. Staring him down, these rich kids were laughing, thinking he was all buddy-buddy with the monster. Seeing his little hands, Rihai realized it was a childhood memory. He wasn't a monster. But there was no changing the minds of those laughing at him. In their eyes, he was the witch's kid. The Duke remembered that day, the king's birthday. He'd never forget it. The day they threw the biggest, most awesome festival of the whole year. That evening, Walter burst into the young lord's room, demanding to know who did this to him. Thinking the lord was acting weird, the kid couldn't figure out why he was making such a sad face at the sight of a water-soaked monster. Rihai knew a human wasn't responsible for his life. His mother brutally burned tens of thousands of people. He was the son of a witch, after all. Holding the young lord close, Walter declared that even if he was a witch's kid, that didn't make him a monster. Wanting to hear it from someone else, the young heir also believed he was human, worthy of living. He just needed to hear it from the Lord. Even when everyone was throwing stones at him, Walter desperately tried to protect him. Nevertheless, it hurt him far more than anything could dull. Walter was the only one in this world on Rihai's side, and even though he was considered a monster, Walter was his only support. But it soon came to light that Knight Walter had left the castle for good and vanished, disappeared from the young prince's world. Walter promised he'd be back soon. He said it before he left, said he needed to sort something out. He left in a hurry with a serious look on his face, and the only thing that returned was news of his disappearance. After that, Rihai was accused of cowardly hiding behind that big, dumb knight. So, as Michael de Filion, the Crown Prince of Filion, saw it, Register was all alone now. The dumb kid hadn't greeted him in the hallway, and Michael demanded an apology, wanting the respect he deserved as heir. Right in front of all the servants, Rihai got slapped, even after apologizing, but it didn't end there. Michael kept hitting him in the face until he saw blood. He thought it was all fake, and that Rihai's apology didn't show any respect for the Crown Prince. As punishment, the prince hit the boy, who had no one on his side in the castle anymore. So, as far as he was concerned, Register better stay close to the floor if he didn't want to disappear like Walter. He knew right then that without Walter, he was just a kid who couldn't do anything, so he had to change. When Duke Filion was 14, assassins started coming after him, because he'd gotten strong enough to fight back. By the time he took control of Killiard, things were so bad he needed guards around him all the time. Ron Benjamin, a sharp and silver-tongued young guy, became his escort knight. There were times Rehist got tired of his try-hard attitude, but he never regretted bringing him on. But Ron's life was cut short. He bit the dust in an explosion. Since then, a bunch more of the young Duke's escorts have been offed in assassination attempts. Each one went down in a different way. Strangulation, drowning, poisoning, even suicide. It was like a curse. Anyone who tried to protect Rehist was doomed to die. He was scared his curse would spread to those around him again, so he didn't want anyone near him. He was dead set on keeping it that way, and then that girl showed up out of nowhere. A girl named Elaine who changed his destiny. Later on, Reihai asked Walter to tell him about Elaine, the one who ordered that sword. He hated everything about his mother, but seeing that sword changed his mind. From Walter's story, the kid learned that Elaine was an old friend of his mom's. She had light green eyes and long silvery hair, and she was super cheerful and always smiling. When she was around Reihai, she couldn't stop laughing and always said she'd protect him her whole life. The Duke teared up at these thoughts, but seeing Elaine in front of him, he wondered if it was still a dream. Looking at her, the Lord couldn't figure out why she had that expression on her face. Feeling a tear drop on his skin, Reihai considered that this might not be the Elaine he knew. Turns out, he'd been poisoned with Likios venom and passed out, but thanks to the antidote, he was finally coming to. Taking care of him all this time, Elaine couldn't relax until she saw him wake up. She asked the Duke not to push himself, saying she'd explain everything after he fully recovered. Just as Milady was about to leave, Lord Reihai thanked her, saying it was the best reward for her work. Meanwhile, thinking back on everything, Sophia wondered where that escort got such power. Power comparable to His Highness's, even better, something he might not even suspect. Suddenly, there was a knock, and Lady Elaine entered the ward to check on Lady Rossley's condition. The fact that the Duke was better, that the antidote was working, and he was now asleep really pleased Sophia. Actually, the heroine had a request. She asked the girl to keep her skills a secret, the ones she used to take down Likios. She knew that if she surpassed Reihai, the strongest knight, she'd attract attention, and everyone would know her face. Some people would remember her, and then Elaine's identity would be exposed when they saw she hadn't aged in 20 years. It was strange that Sophia wasn't as noisy as usual, but she agreed without question. That's because she owed Milady a debt, so she promised to say nothing, giving her knight's word. She also apologized for being harsh, not knowing Lady Elaine's skills, and just being jealous of her position. Lady Rossley was the eldest daughter of a fallen earl's family. But 5 years ago, a monster invaded their village, and she was on the brink of death after losing her home and family. At that moment, His Highness saved their village, and with it, gave the girl a second chance at life. However, having lost her home and family, Sophia would have preferred to die rather than be saved and live with this pain. Then the Duke said that her suffering wasn't a reason to die, because the living must live on. He didn't have any family left, no home to return to. It happened when he was just a kid. There was a time when Reihai sat and cried like this girl, but he managed to get through that hell. A person who loses everything isn't easily broken, so he told the girl not to give in, that she still had a long life ahead of her. Sophia feels awkward bawling like this in front of others, but she actually got support from the guy she was cursing. Cezanne bursting into the room like that totally freaked them out. He wasn't expecting Lady Sophia to be awake already. The heroine was practically speechless when she heard he had a couple of questions for her about Lycos. He'd heard she took down that huge monster all by herself, even if it was weakened from the Duke's attack. Plus, Elaine insisted she didn't do it alone. Lady Sophia helped her out. That's when the girl spilled the beans, saying Lady Elaine did everything herself, going back on her knight's oath. Rossley did fight the monster, but she was just dead weight because of her injuries. She felt terrible about it. According to the Duke's escort, it was thanks to her help that she was able to handle Lycos. But Sophia was sure she was just in the way. She couldn't help because of her injuries, and then they had to carry her around afterward. It seemed like they could argue forever, but the important thing is they made it back in one piece. So, the Knights of Phelan are stuck at the Earl's mansion until Rehist recovers. One of the maids was stoked the monster was caught. Like everyone else, she noticed the vibe in the mansion had been totally messed up lately. Rumor had it Sylvia, who went missing, was back safe and sound. Thanks to the Knights, they dodged a bullet. People were saying they were super competent, so the maids were hoping they'd stick around for a while. The girls were chatting so much, they didn't even see the bloodthirsty beast suddenly pounce on them. Seeing a bear right in front of them, they screamed bloody murder, ready to call for the knights ASAP. Then, out from inside the bear costume popped Milady. She apologized and asked where the kitchen was. The Duke was poisoned by Lycos, but the internal damage wasn't fatal. A normal person would have kicked the bucket in an hour. Thanks to the Silver Knight, the master was spared from serious injury. Lady Elaine brought the ingredients. At first, the Lady Knight thought she'd just get the herbs, but she managed to snag Lycos's heart. Not knowing what happened to Lady Sophia, the girl said that Lady Elaine brought her back wounded. Rihai knew his escort was great, but she was so good she took down Lycos all by herself. But if she was that strong, her name would be all over the continent. Nobody's ever heard of a knight like that. Anyway, the doc told Rihai to take it easy for a while and remember to take his meds. Since the Duke's checkup was done, Lady Elaine was nice enough to bring him some grub. It's bear stew, to help the captain get back on his feet. He's gotta love it. The girl even caught the bear herself, thinking it would be a good way to help Rihai get his strength back, so she cooked it up. But she didn't expect the rumors about her saving Lady Sophia and bringing back Lycos's heart to reach the captain, too. Panicked, Elaine said that Lady Sophia helped her, that she was the one who first hurt Lycos. Honestly, the Duke thought something was off about this girl the first time he saw her. Now he wants to know what she was up to before she joined the Felina Knights. Knowing Rihai was suspicious, she figured he'd realized she took down Lycos all by herself. Since Milady had a good reason to keep quiet, the captain didn't press her and wrapped up the conversation. Changing the subject, he complimented her cooking. Turns out Elaine learned to cook from someone she lived with as a kid. It wasn't apparent. Her parents ditched her when she was just a little kid. But there was someone who took her in. That person was her savior, and she learned to cook from him. Hearing that, Rehist finally understood why the forms in her application were blank. Nobody had ever done anything like that for him, but it seemed the person who took Elaine in really cared about her. The Duke hasn't known this girl long, but he's already noticed her straightforward nature, which is rare. It's probably because she grew up under the care of such a wonderful person. Suddenly remembering the past, she couldn't hold back the tears and just broke down crying right in front of the captain. She couldn't tell him the truth, but damn, she wanted to scream it from the rooftops. The person who looked after Elaine, that stand-up person, is Mother Rahista. But she had to say that person was gone, and now she's living according to their wishes, so everything's cool for now. Seeing Rihai ate everything, Milady promised to make more if he got sick again, but asked him not to. Whatever she wants, the captain won't screw up again, and more importantly, he told Milady not to be so reckless. But if he's ever in danger, Lady Elaine asked them not to hold her back. She was being so stubborn. After Rehist woke up, the Phelan Knights continued their investigation. No more survivors were found, but they did find remains of the missing, which was reported to the Earl. Earl Wallendorf paid compensation and condolences to the families of the deceased, and the survivors expressed their gratitude to Rehist. Soon, during a casual conversation, the Duke suddenly noticed a rustling in the bushes that scared off the birds. Bursting out, the little crazy critter leaped right at the captain. Turns out it wasn't some wild mountain beast, just a cat, but it's weird how it got here. Just exchanging glances, Rihai and Elaine realized it was Beatrice, the one that went missing. The Earl was over the moon that his little darling was found and that Lycius was dealt with, so he decided to throw a banquet. Spotting Elaine at the banquet, Suzanne pointed to the Earl, who was lounging so lazily in his chair. The knight was sure he threw this whole banquet for his cat, not for the knights. Shoving him aside, Lady Sophia offered Milady a taste of the veal shank. She usually gets ticked when she can't eat, but she's being all nice, so Cézanne thought it was strange. Just then, Duke Filion raced past everyone, hurrying outside. He said there was no need to follow him, but Elaine decided to get some fresh air too. Spring's finally starting to show its face. You can see buds popping out on the trees. It's March already, so it's getting warmer every day. Elaine was thinking it would be awesome if the Duke threw a festival when the flowers bloom. He mentioned they throw a flower and butterfly festival in Killyard every March, so it's coming up soon. Without even realizing it, our girl knew she had to go get Saturn sooner rather than later. Then she said she wanted to take a week off when she got back, now that her adjustment period was over. After getting the Duke's okay, she felt a little sad to leave and asked if he liked fireworks. Just the thought of fireworks took Rihai back to being a kid, when other kids would give him a hard time under the lights, calling him a witch's son. Out of nowhere, Elaine conjured up some fireworks with her magic, and seeing how beautiful they were, the Duke realized he actually did like them. Seems like this was the perfect time to get the captain a birthday present, hoping he'd be into it. Elaine found out about it from Sir Loyard, but Rihai was so busy he forgot all about it. He didn't even notice the brooch he got was beat up. He thought it was the perfect gift. When he promised to wear it, he couldn't figure out why this girl was being so nice to him. Turns out the reason was incredibly simple. Lady Elaine just wanted His Highness to be happy. People wanted the witch's son to suffer, just as much as those who fell victim to the witch. But things have changed now, though the Duke tried to push those thoughts away. The attendant asked if he liked fireworks, and now he was ready to say yes. They're sparks. Now this moment from old memories is clearer. Maybe fireworks aren't so bad. A few days later, the Knights of Phaline returned to Killiard. Elaine's contributions were highly praised among the knights. After coming back, it seemed like the Duke was swamped with paperwork. It hadn't been long since he returned. Rihai needed a distraction. He couldn't focus on the festival budget without Lady Elaine around. He's been useless since he's been back from Valendor. So much stuff piled up. Come to think of it, Lady Elaine got her award and immediately took off on vacation. She'll be back before the festival, though. Out of nowhere, Lord Lovell asked him to escort her. Apparently, she said she'd invite the Duke to go with her. Just then, the Duke got a visitor. Hillarister finally returned from her expedition. Meanwhile, Elaine, hunting for that ingredient, found it. The place hadn't changed. She was worried it might be gone, but everything went great. Now it's time to head back home. Lady Rister did a solid job on her expedition. All the monsters in the Duke's specified location were wiped out. But they still couldn't find him this time either. It's been 10 years since he vanished. Before he left, Walter couldn't say for sure how long his trip would take. He promised everything would be revealed when the time was right, saying there was nothing to worry about. Just in case he didn't make it back, Walter left Hill in charge of looking after the young prince's well-being. There are a lot of fishy things about Walter's disappearance. He left Rihi with Hill like he knew he might vanish. Killiard got so crowded in just a week. It's insane to think how many people will be here on the festival day. Seeing the knight's squad in uniform, the heroine realized she was seeing these faces for the first time. Lady Sophia noticed her right away. After all, today's Elaine's first day back from vacation. Sophia told her these were knights who'd recently returned from a long expedition. The knights were happy to see the newbie until they found out she was His Highness's attendant. The guys were positive His Highness would never appoint a rookie as an attendant. Jumping in to defend her, Sophia told them not to jump to conclusions about Lady Elaine. After all, she took down Lycios single-handedly. After impressing the knights, a pleased Rossley decided to find out how Elaine's vacation went and if she managed to relax. Like always, Cézanne barged right into the conversation. He missed her so much, he had to know when she got back. If he'd known she was here, he would have already announced it, but the timing was terrible. In the hallway, the young man ran into His Highness, who looked super busy because the festival was coming up fast. When there was a knock at the door, the Duke thought it was Lovell, but his beautiful escort appeared on his office doorstep. Thanks to the captain, Elaine had a great vacation, but she feels bad. He was so busy while she was gone. Since she was going to the festival as a knight, Rihai let her have that day off too. He wasn't planning on going himself. He had too much work to finish. He doesn't have time for that. But suddenly, the girl suggested he go with her, assuring him that one day off wouldn't hurt anything. As for the work, starting today she'd been learning to help the captain so they could finish it quickly together. Rihai played hard to get it first, but Lovell already told him the lady wanted to tag along. So he couldn't turn her down. Elaine thought he was going to take it back when she heard that. Normally, the Duke wouldn't bother, but a little downtime with his crew wouldn't hurt. Festival day, Elaine went all out with her outfit. She's clueless about fashion, so she asked Sophia for help. She thought she looked ridiculous, but Rihai thought it looked great on her. Once inside the festival, the Duke noticed it was way more packed than last year. Suddenly grabbing his hand and staring him right in the eyes, Elaine begged him not to let go. As she dragged him along, the Duke thought she was getting ahead of herself, since she was the one holding on. The heroine thought the whole thing was weird. She wondered if Rihi's back had always been that broad. The spot they ended up at was amazing. So many street vendors and the smells were incredible. Elaine couldn't resist bringing back some food, and Rihai even told her to get whatever she wanted. She got back with the stuff pretty quick, but it was hard to believe she'd eat it all herself. Among the goodies, she brought the captain some meat skewers, and they were loaded with spices. The meat was way too salty. Walter wouldn't let Rihai eat stuff like that, said it was bad for his health. Suddenly, Elaine spotted something interesting behind him and suggested they go check it out together. They were greeted warmly at the festival shooting range, the staff assuming they were a young couple. They were offered a game where the grand prize was a huge teddy bear, perfect as a gift. That sounded interesting enough for the Duke to agree, and he asked Lady Elaine to play along. Thanks to his natural talent, Rihai, the strongest knight, hit every single bullseye. Not believing people like that existed, the owner handed over the prize, saying he enjoyed watching them compete that much. When he saw Lady Elaine decided to give the Duke the bear, Rihai protested, since he'd won it for her. For their public lovers' quarrel, the young couple got kicked out of the shooting gallery to take it outside. So they agreed that whoever won rock, paper, scissors would get the prize, and looks like Elaine came out on top. And even though she really wanted to give the prize to the Duke, she'd already given him a gift, and that was enough for him. Asking her to think of the toy as settling a debt, His Highness suggested they move on. On the way, the heroine was bothered by the thought that everyone thought Rihai and she looked like lovers. He's still like a little nephew to her, but it's understandable they're getting the wrong idea because they're the same age. Lost in thought, dwelling on it, the heroine almost got run over by a cart if the Duke hadn't pulled her close. Wanting to show her something too, he suggested they go to a more secluded spot. The exceptionally beautiful place, covered in marigolds, felt like a dream you never wanted to wake up from. Rihai stumbled on this sweet spot by pure chance, but now it's brought a ton of new feels. Looking at this beauty, Elaine wished they could all be here together, Bella, Lloyd, and Esmel. Unlike Bella and Lloyd, Esmel vanished without a trace, and she didn't even know if he was still alive. Lloyd figures he couldn't have kicked the bucket since he's a demon. He'd definitely survive even some gnarly wounds. At first, our girl thought Esmel was watching over Rehai, but it looks like Rehai has no clue Esmel even exists. It's getting late, so the Duke suggested they head back ASAP. Even if things look bleak, as long as they're alive, they'll meet up with Esmel someday. While they were gone, some stuff went down. The master was seriously ticked off when he found out the Duke wasn't around. Lovell told the guy to chill out and explain everything first, but just then, Rihai's master showed up. Looking at the dude begging for help, His Highness recognized him as the Rister family's butler. "We've got a problem. Lady Hilla's younger brother, young Master Edwin, has been kidnapped." The grief-stricken butler was devastated by the loss. Tormented, he threw himself to the ground, weeping. Only after a glass of water could he calm down, so His Highness asked him to explain everything. It happened yesterday, the sun was about to set, so Chase told Master Edwin to head back. Edwin Rister, the Earl of Rister, after a serious shopping spree, agreed to return. Time flew by. He bought all that for his little sister, who's coming back soon. She's been away for days looking for their father. Figuring she hadn't been eating well, Edwin wanted to greet her with a tasty meal he'd make himself. Also, it's been exactly a year since he became Earl, and he wanted to show off that he can manage the land without Jackson's help. However, Chase still remembered how he messed up last time because he didn't have help. Just as Edwin was saying he was still too young, a terrifying gang of thugs surrounded them both. This kid, this Lord Edwin, they really took a shine to him, thinking he was Hilla Rister's brother. Hearing the mercenary offer to take the young Earl with him, Chase didn't hesitate to put his sword to the guy's throat. The knight wasn't going to stand for that kind of arrogance and told the dude to back off from the Earl. Trying to protect the young lord, Chase got hit with some kind of magic shock. His body just seized up. The young Earl screamed in terror, about to rush in and help, but the mercenary ordered him to stop right there. Wielding a sword that conducts electricity, the mercenary was ready to off the knight by cranking up the voltage if Edwin moved an inch. Now the kid was ordered to drop everything he had and go with the thug to save the knight. Chase desperately tried to stop the boy, but it was no use. Before leaving, the killer tossed him a message and told him to give it to Lady Hilla. If she doesn't want to see her brother dead, she's got to bring Lichtafillion to the specified location within a week. According to Rister's butler, Chase came too late, returned to the mansion, and handed over this note. Lady Hill is planning to rescue her brother. Lady Hill asked him not to tell anyone about this, so as not to endanger anyone, but the butler couldn't keep something like this to himself. It sounded insane. Elaine couldn't understand the connection between these thugs and Lady Hill, or why they kidnapped someone in the first place. The butler didn't know, but in the note they identified themselves as the Haloid mercenaries. 2 years ago, Duke Filion received a request to eliminate a group of thieves, and they've been holding a grudge ever since. Lady Hill was with him, so it's clear they were trying to get to him through her. Hearing the butler mention that Walter was missing, Elaine couldn't believe it. Having decided not to kill those hunting him, Duke Filion decided to set out at dawn to find Earl Edwin together. The next morning, accompanied by the butler, the Duke showed up at the Rister mansion, taking Lady Rister completely by surprise. Learning that Jackson had spilled the beans, she was absolutely furious, especially after she'd asked him to keep it quiet. But the lady never suspected that Rihai would think he should have known about this sooner. Despite Hilla's worries, the Duke was going to get involved. If he doesn't go, the Count's in deep trouble. As far as he knows, Lady Rossley's been summoned to what used to be a prison, and those guys are surveillance pros. If Rihai doesn't show, there's a real chance Hilla gets nabbed right away. Then they'll off her and the hostage, Edwin. And then she'll be the hostage, and the mercs will demand Duke Filion Killiard comes running. They're holding a grudge against him, and they'll do anything to get to him. But Hilla promised to protect him until his father gets back. Her only fear is the unknown. What could happen while he's gone, and she doesn't know what kind of face she'll see when he returns. Truth is, Walter wouldn't want his kids dying because of him, and the lady knew that full well. Walter Rister, Hilla Rister. Lady Hilla was Sir Walter's daughter. Elaine wasn't close to them, so her memories are hazy. 20 years ago, they were tight with Lloyd and the commander of the Royal Knights. So Hilla made the Duke promise that if his life was ever in danger, he'd run and forget about her and her brother. Butting into the conversation, Lady Elaine declared that she had people looking out for her. Sir Filion realized he hadn't introduced Lady Elaine to his bodyguard. It was a pleasure for her to meet her. Seeing the very person who'd applied for security detail during the ceremony, Hilla couldn't believe he'd hired her to work for him. As for the Haloid mercenaries, they definitely scattered after their little chat with the Filey's Knights. There were a lot of people at that meeting the other day, and rumor has it some of them had magical devices. You know, those things aren't exactly easy to handle, so it's weird that some low-rent thugs would have them. If nothing's changed, everything should be like it is on the map, where Hilla found that old beat-up prison. So, the heroes decided to break down the map and come up with a rescue plan. Turns out, the reason Edwin was kidnapped was because his sister works for a big shot named Rahist de Filion. It's not rocket science to figure out he's the son of the witch who caused the Seneca incident. According to the merc, after his dad bit the dust because of the witch, he got burned bad all over, and put together a merc group after he somehow pulled through. But that witch's little boy, all grown up, scattered those mercs. That mom and her kid wrecked the guy's life. He couldn't undo the past, but he could set things right. But when Edwin said it wasn't his problem, the group member lost it and clocked him one, right in the face. He was convinced this kid was involved, seeing as his sister works for that lowlife. The boss didn't want to touch the boy because he's a hostage, but he didn't think he and his sister would believe they were doing the wrong thing. Telling Edwin not to sweat it, the merc was sure nobody ever died from losing just one eye. At the worst possible moment, word came that they'd been hit, and someone's trying to ID the intruders. Of course, Tarrenton was betting it's that kid's little sister, and if Rhea's got the same attitude, they came together. Lucky for the young Earl, his sister didn't ditch him, but he shouldn't celebrate just yet, or do anything stupid until the Duke's caught. Judging by the map, Earl Edwin's being hidden either in the prison's central section or the West Wing. Splitting up, Rihai and Elaine decided to head to the West Building, while Hill and her people went to the central part. Inside the West Wing, the heroes split up again. Elaine went left, but the Earl wasn't that way. They met up at the end of the hall, but still no sign of the kid. It's like he's not even in this building. Our girl knew they had to find the hostage before they got caught. He's in deep trouble until they defuse that bomb. As they decided to check the upper floor, suddenly a strange voice echoed from around the corner. Scared, the group decided to bolt, but they didn't get far. They ran right into a dead end. Meanwhile, in the central section, the Knights found nothing, and they couldn't get in touch with the others either. In that case, Hill decided to search the warehouse, sending her people to search the admin building. Hoping her brother was being held in this building, the girl boldly opened the door. Instantly, she was attacked, coming face to face with a life-threatening danger. Seeing the girl alone, the mercenary was surprised the Duke wasn't there, but he really didn't have time to mess with her. And Hilla didn't have time for him either, so she demanded he tell her where her brother was, holding her sword to his throat. In that instant, the assassin grabbed the sword with his bare hand, and the girl felt like she'd been electrocuted, her hand badly burned. Now the lowlife was hoping she'd finally tell him where the Duke was. Elaine and Rihai were almost caught, but together they managed to fight off a couple of mercenaries. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed. It was a warning, maybe they'd caught Hilla. Hearing news of the intrusion, the heroine didn't know what to do. They still hadn't caught the Earl. The Duke had no choice but to become bait to draw them away, so Elaine could find the Earl. So the heroine decided to become bait herself, but these guys are after Rihai right now. Since her being around could mess up their search, Milady agreed, but she still told the captain to be careful. After getting away, Elaine tried to chill out, figuring the Earl might be on the top floor. Focusing on the sounds, she found where the calls for help were coming from. Behind the wall, she found a secret entrance, hiding a hidden door leading into the unknown. Meanwhile, seeing the Duke, the Galloid mercenaries took off after him, but he was just too damn fast for them. He managed to pull ahead, and on the way, he suddenly spotted a building that wasn't on the map. Deciding to check it out, Rihai burst inside and went down the stairs until he suddenly heard screaming. Down there, in the prison cells, scared and broken people were ready to do anything they were asked. But the guy with the scar over his eye, who was a real piece of work, didn't show mercy to anyone, no matter who they were. As he was about to meet his end, the guy wanted to know what it felt like for the Duke to watch someone like him die. The mercenary had been waiting a long time, and he kept himself busy while he waited. He was getting tired of it, since finding someone who looked similar and kidnapping them was an expensive game. Black hair, pale skin, violet eyes, to the assassin, the Duke was just repulsive. After getting away with so much, the mercenary wondered if the Duke would mind if the same thing happened to Edwin. To stop this lowlife from doing something terrible, Rihai threw down his sword and surrendered. All apologies. Face down on the floor, bowing before His Highness, that's how the guy wanted to see the witch's cursed son. Now that the fish had taken the bait, he could finally get his revenge. Seeing Edwin in the basement, Elaine couldn't believe they were treating this kid so badly. She was working with Lady Hilla and came to rescue him, but the angry kid ordered her to get lost immediately. "Don't go near him, it's way too dangerous. He's got a bomb strapped to his neck." Even though he was terrified it would blow, Milady decided to get closer and take a look. Turns out this thing can only be cracked with brute force. Even a pro mage would need a lot of time. After thinking for a sec, Elaine decided to use her magic to deactivate the bomb. A moment later, it was done. The bomb vanished, which Edwin just couldn't believe. A device that only magic can destroy? Even some mages and masters can't control external magic like that. The only reason she could destroy it was because of the powers Bella gave her. After freeing the young Earl from those cruel criminals, she said she'd just done this kind of thing before and it was time to head back. Now the mercenary was looking down at the Duke, but Rihai just thought he was a joke, and smiled. That lowlife was hurting innocent people, thinking he was getting back at Duke Filion. That wasn't enough, so he went after his subordinate's family. All that just showed how terrified he was to deal with His Majesty in person. That pissed the thug off so bad he figured the Duke was clueless, so he mashed the button to set off the bomb. But when nothing happened, the guy got worried, like something went wrong and the button broke. Truth is, Filion's subordinate already disarmed the bomb and bailed. That's why pushing the button did squat. The reality is, Rihai got the signal, found the hostage on the top floor of the east building, and defused the bomb. It ain't hard to guess what the mercenary was about to do. His whole life he'd dreamed of taking out that cursed son of a witch. Waiting for the right moment, the Duke snapped the iron shackles and lunged at his enemy. He used a close-quarters combat move and flipped the bandit over his shoulder, scaring the crap out of him. Hitting the ground, the guy couldn't believe it and didn't get how the Duke pulled all that off. Turns out the handcuffs were weak. They should have made him out of something tougher if they were gonna nab His Majesty. The gang members immediately rushed forward, drawing their swords to grab the Duke. But they all instantly fell before the might and power of the Killiard Empire's unmatched strongest knights. The fearless warriors restored order, although Hilla still had to apologize for being late. According to Rehist, they arrived just in time. It was time to tie up these thugs, drag them outside, and hogtie them. Finally, the whole Galloid gang is here. There were others among them, but they're already dealt with. As for Hilla's hand, she said she made a slight miscalculation while fighting against the magical weapon. Just as they realized Count Edwin was missing, a voice echoed from the woods, and Elaine appeared on the horizon. Through her own strength and the bravery of her escort, she managed to find Edwin and bring him back safe and sound. While searching the top floor, she found a secret room. She found him in there, removed the bomb from his neck, and saved him. Even though there were injuries on his neck, the boy insisted he was fine. It was just a scratch, and the bruise was from the rope. Hilla held her little brother tight, feeling guilty she hadn't found him sooner. The important thing is he's okay now. You could say I was just running late getting ready to rescue him. Anyway, everyone's safe, so it's time to head home. Everyone's waiting for us. After Rihai and his men rescued Edwin and the commoners, he went straight back to the mansion and got patched up. But Elaine didn't know what to do about the scar on his otherwise perfect face. The Duke was practically squirming, not knowing where to look, as she kept insisting on applying the cream. Just then, Lady Hilla and her little brother Edwin walked in. She came to express her gratitude. Grateful for yesterday, Edwin couldn't imagine the trouble he'd be in if Lady Elaine hadn't found him. He was also grateful to His Grace for coming to his sister's aid. But Rihai didn't need the thanks. The kid was in that mess because of him, and Elaine was just helping out. Honestly, at first Hilla didn't believe Elaine could be the Duke's escort, but now she gets why he picked her. Right now, she was ready to wholeheartedly wish that brave girl all the best. Figuring nobody had eaten yet and everyone was starving, Edwin wanted to thank them properly, like family. So they all agreed to finally eat. Their mission was a success. It had only been a few days since the kidnapping case wrapped up, and the hero returned to Killyard. A carrier pigeon arrived, bringing news about Nathan's magical circle research. From the letter, Elaine learned that the master was planning to meet for lunch to discuss the research results. Realizing it was finally over, the girl was going to hurry up, get ready, and head out to make it to lunch. Just then, Duke Filion walked into the room. Nothing was wrong, he just popped in for a sec. He just had a special gift prepared. It's really important to him. Rihai mentioned the old guard before. Elaine figured he meant Walter. If Walter hadn't saved the Count, he'd never forgive himself. He'd be ashamed if Walter came back and the Count was gone. He didn't want to lose someone because of his mistake again. Anyway, this is His Majesty's way of saying thanks, hoping Elaine will like it. After he left, she remembered she didn't have time for this, so she stashed it in a drawer and took off. She arrived on time, but Nathan was nowhere to be seen amongst the crowd. But then, Elaine spotted the golden-haired kid about to buy a piece of fruit for a whole gold coin. She snuck up on him so fast Nathan almost jumped out of his skin. Turns out he really needed that fruit, and they were trying to rip him off. Giving the vendor a copper coin, hoping that price would work, she told him to stop scamming tourists. Guys like him give Killyard a bad name, and that's gonna come back to bite him. When they arrived, Elaine suggested Nathan slip away to a private room to make the exchange unnoticed. The missing piece, the one the mage had been so desperate to get, was finally in his hands. Seeing how stoked he was, the girl finally asked him to show her the research results. Among the existing magic, Nathan added some characteristics that the girl had mentioned. All the heroine remembered was a vertical eye. Magic circles sometimes have that, but it wasn't what she was looking for. Suddenly, as he was reading, a small scrap of paper fell out, and the heroine was stunned by what she saw. She held in her hands the very magic circle she'd been searching for. Nathan couldn't believe what he was hearing. He'd been debating whether to bring her or not, but he did in the end. This circle vanished in ancient times. Turns out it's a magic circle that could take over the entire continent. But before doing anything, the sorcerer wanted to clear some things up and figure out just what kind of person Lady Elaine was, for crying out loud. Like he said, this is some ancient magic most wizards don't even know about, but this girl does. According to the heroine, she asked for it, even though she didn't know anything about it, and even if she did, she couldn't use it. So the wizard explained it's mind control magic, the kind that has no limits. Controlling everything, it could become a real problem if a bad dude gets his hands on it, or if it's used carelessly, everyone's gonna pay. Back then, Bella's eyes weren't her own, just like Elaine thought. Bella was under someone's influence. Anyway, finding info on this magic is tough, but one thing's clear. It uses the blood of an evil dragon as a material for the circle. Even though they're extinct now, that evil energy is super strong, so it's perfect for curses. If it's an evil dragon, then Elaine wants to cut another deal with Nathan. As soon as she heard evil dragon, something clicked in her head. 20 years ago, the royal family tried to control an evil dragon, and a squad was sent to bring it down. So 4 royal families were involved: Lloyd and Bella, the second and third princes, and Chelsea the first, the current king. Chelsea's the most suspicious, but they vanished after the Seneca incident, and so did Lloyd. That leaves the prince and princess. The second prince, Chelsea de Fillion, took the throne after the last king, and Lloyd died. But the third prince is a duke now, and he absolutely hated Bella. To figure out what really happened, Elaine needs the Dragon Subjugation Squad roster, but all the originals are gone. As she was thinking about seeing them, she suddenly bumped into some old buddies from the Knightly Order. Sophia just wanted to hang with the guy, and Cézanne ran into her on the way back from getting his sword fixed. That's why they're together. Duke Fillion showed up out of nowhere, happy to see them all together, said he was just looking for Cézanne. Turning to him and Lady Elaine, Rihai asked them to step into his office for a sec. Just hearing that the Marquis is making a deal and they need to buy lumber for repairs made Cézanne's face twist up. Lakers wood is the strongest, so the Duke wanted a meeting, but they insisted on seeing Cézanne. Obviously, the knight got here with the Margrave's backing, and now the captain wants to know what's up. Either way, the Duke wants the kid to tag along even if he's not thrilled, because this deal is a big deal. The next day they set out and the road got freezing cold. Seeing Cézanne looking so rough, Elaine decided to ask about those stopped shipments from the north. The Duke didn't know why, but about a year ago, shipments slowed down, and recently they stopped completely. Since it's messing with trade, Lord Fillion was planning on paying them a visit. When they arrived, they were greeted by Margrave Lakers, the owner of Lakers. As soon as the Margrave noticed Cézanne, saying it's been a while, the kid visibly wilted. Time to head inside the mansion. Lakers is an old family that lives way up north. On this land, where a wicked dragon slumbers, the Lakers family keeps constant watch to prevent its awakening. It's no secret the Lakers are known for their top-notch support, acting as a shield for the people here. McGrath suggested we discuss the deal here, even though Miss Lakers usually handles the lumber trade. Sir Lakers said she's under the weather, so he's standing in for her today. Miss Lakers is a young woman who, rumor has it, wielded immense power in society, but they say she vanished a year ago. Suddenly, as the maid carried the tea, she tripped on the edge of the rug and lost her balance, falling towards Lady Elaine. Luckily, the girl wasn't burned thanks to her clothing. She just asked permission to step away for a moment. The maid was ordered to accompany Milady, and she couldn't stop apologizing the whole way. She wanted to prepare a change of clothes, but Elaine told her to just give her a plain towel and leave her alone. The girl was glad that Reha had her own business here, because she needed to find something too. The Lakers are the vanguard of the North. They needed the list of those who arrived in the northern mountains. 20 years ago, the team that conquered the evil dragon would have handed that list over to the Lakers. The heroine was so fixated on finding the right list that she bumped into a lord in the hallway. She apologized immediately, but seeing his face, she knew this conversation wasn't going to be friendly. The ill-tempered young man figured she was so meek she couldn't even look him in the eye. Leaving this jerk behind, Elaine decided to leave, but he stopped her and demanded a proper apology. Hearing nothing back, the lord decided she must have hearing problems too, so he repeated that she should apologize. Not even knowing who he was, the bold girl declared that he should apologize too, since he bumped into her. Just then, the Duke's voice echoed. His attendant hadn't returned, so Rihi came looking for her. Seeing Licht here, Sir Fillion didn't understand what the girl was doing here next to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince tried to find out why they were there, but Rihai just shut him down, said they had business. Licht, thinking that was a pretty arrogant response, pressed him to elaborate. He pointed out that Duke Fillion comes from a humble and kinda messed up background, but he sure acts like he's hot stuff. Besides, the prince figured you gotta train your people, especially since the girl keeps saying she doesn't feel like apologizing. Just then, Cézanne and Marquis Lakers showed up in the hallway, and he was surprised to see the prince. Licht's still waltzing in here unannounced, so the Marquis needs to make good on the promise he made. Since Mr. Lakers is busy today, the Crown Prince ordered him to bring Lady Juliana here. He was sure she wasn't that under the weather that she couldn't talk about the engagement. The Crown Prince has come here 5 times in 3 months, but nothing ever seems to get resolved. The Marquis keeps blocking him from seeing Juliana, like she's actually on her deathbed or something. The truth about Lady Juliana not wanting to get engaged to the prince hit him like a ton of bricks. Mr. Lakers figured Licht wanted to use a marriage with his daughter to get his hands on the North's resources. His daughter's a smart and kind kid, she's not blinded by power. Thinking the girl was just a simpleton, the Crown Prince got pissed, but decided to leave the palace without a word. After their meeting, the Margrave was worried, so he said he needed to step away for a minute. But right now, All Rihai cares about is making sure Lady Elaine doesn't get hurt. Since everything's cool, they decided to head back to the room, 'cause the mistress will be here soon. That's when the heroine noticed something was up with Cezanne, but she didn't know what was going on. As soon as the heroes walked into the room, Miss Lakers started screaming like a banshee. It was terrifying to see her lose it like that. Hearing the girl order them to bring the crown prince to her, like, right now, Cezanne broke a sweat and froze up. He hit the floor like a sack of bricks, right in front of Lady Lakers, who was totally out of her mind and covered in blood. She stared at him, her eyes burning with hatred and cunning, thinking, finally, this piece of trash is back. Picking up a shard of glass from the floor, she decided to find out what was up with that paradise he came crawling back from. To her, Cezanne was always the same, a pathetic loser who only knew how to hide. Waving the shard at him, Juliana, completely unhinged, demanded to know why he'd even bothered showing up if he couldn't handle things. Repenting for his serious mistake, Cezanne apologized and lowered his head. Just then, the Margrave told his daughter to stop it and asked the young man to help them. Juliana couldn't believe her ears. Her father had called him, again, that useless idiot who couldn't take care of anything. According to Lord Lakers, they shouldn't blame Cezanne so much. It wasn't his fault what happened. But it wasn't just his fault. It was also the Margrave's, who, in a way, had destroyed Cezanne himself. After Juliana accused her father of this, she collapsed unconscious on the floor, and a worried maid rushed to her side. So, Mr. Lakers ordered the maid to clean up here and take the girl to her bedroom. Duke Filion usually doesn't get involved in personal matters, but he thought the problem with the lumber business was connected to this incident. Hearing this, Mr. Lakers declared he couldn't keep it hidden any longer. Only after some time did Cezanne calm down, and now he was ready to tell everything himself. Before he started talking about that, he wanted to talk about the family relationships. Cezanne Weston had a brother who was 5 years older than him. His name was Caesar. Their parents were knights of this mansion. They both went on a mission and died young at the hands of demons. Marquis Lakers adopted the boys and allowed them to call him Dad. It was a beacon of hope, a helping hand that guided them towards the future. After that, Cezanne and his brother wanted to become knights to show their gratitude, so the two of them started escorting Juliana. Then, during training, Cezanne's sword suddenly flew out of his hand. Turns out he was weaker than his brother. Cesar always told him not to close his eyes, but he was surprised that he actually had some decent skills. Asking if he was scared, Cezanne said he might have accidentally closed his eyes. The older brother was scared too, but he was even more afraid that Cezanne might turn away from him. Cesar was always brave and guided his younger brother everywhere. The lady cared for them a lot. The three of them spent their whole childhood together. Those were precious moments. But something happened a year ago. Due to some unexpected events, Cezanne got spooked. It was the day they started developing the forest. Since Juliana was in charge of the lumber business, she had to be there. The brothers were escorting her while she worked, when suddenly they found a rotten tree and started sawing it down. But just when they were about to chop it down, this showed up, a monster bigger and taller than the tree itself. The forest creature instantly attacked the workers. People bitten by the monster went crazy and started attacking others, infecting them. That's when Caesar stepped up, saying they'd handle the monster while Juliana evacuated everyone else. So there Caesar was, facing an impossible task, keeping it together during his first real fight. But he was overwhelmed by the sight of the bodies, totally panicked. He kept thinking his parents died the same way. The kid couldn't fight, so he tried to run, but the monster immediately went after him. To shield his brother from a fatal blow, Caesar threw himself in front and plunged his sword into the monster. But then his mind started to cloud over. His eyes lost their spark. The kid apologized to his family one last time. A second later, Caesar transformed into a bloodthirsty monster, but his family thought it was just some kind of sick joke. That day, his blood spilled out in front of everyone. Juliana and Cezanne lost their brother forever. After the Margrave offed his eldest son himself, the monster vanished into the woods and they couldn't find it. They gathered up all the bodies, including the older brothers, and headed back home. Ever since, Juliana hasn't left her room, and with his father's backing, Cezanne's transferred to the Files Knights. Unable to cope with the heavy memories of it all, the kid decided he needed some space. Looking at him, the Margrave realized he screwed up. He figured it'd be for the best if Cezanne joined the Files Knights, but he was wrong. Thanking the guests for coming, Lord Lakers suggested they stay the night since it was already late. Then, Rihai suddenly said he was ready to do whatever it took if they needed help. Elaine never imagined Cezanne had gone through something like that, so she figured he just needed to be left alone. The Duke also decided he needed some peace and quiet, so he suggested they head to their rooms and get some rest. That night, Juliana stared at her expensive pendant for a long time, a keepsake of her beloved Caesar. She suddenly called out to her maid and asked what she would do if someone took away the thing she loved most. The girl was timid, so she said she'd probably just complain about it. But her mistress preferred revenge. Even the weak get that chance. Things got complicated because of the arguments earlier, and now it's night, so she has to be careful. The only obstacle is the 2 guards watching the room at the entrance. But even that wasn't a problem for Elaine. She planned to use a sleeping draft perfume. But when someone suddenly grabbed her shoulder, she felt her heart leap into her throat. Seeing Cezanne, she was a little flustered. He just wanted to know what she was doing here so late. To cover her tracks, Lady Elaine had to lie, saying she couldn't sleep and decided to take a walk. Cezanne actually went through something similar, and it helped him, so he figured he'd give it a shot too. He barely got the nerve to ask something when suddenly, a loud, terrifying noise ripped through the air. Panicked, the knight rushed into his sister's room and found their dad in tears. Turns out, Juliana was gone. Drowning in tears, the maid started blaming herself for not checking on her sooner. When she went in, the window was already open and it was freezing. The girl tried to find her. Not knowing what Juliana was thinking, Elaine figured it was more important to find her than to point fingers. Duke Filion came to see what all the commotion was about after hearing the loud scream. When he learned from the attendant that Juliana was missing, he decided to find her ASAP. Just then, the knight shouted they'd found Lady Lakers's shoe. The knight examined the area where the shoe was found and discovered the tracks led north. Meanwhile, Juliana was pushing herself through the freezing snow, driven only by thoughts of Caesar. Just a year ago, the bright and shining Miss Lakers never would have dreamed of obeying her uncle. No matter how hard he tried to marry her off, she'd always be loyal to Caesar, and only him. But since the stubborn elders were against them and trying to stop them, he figured they weren't meant to be. The girl didn't care, though. She listened to her heart and declared that Caesar would be a part of the Lakers family. After all, she'd already done everything she could, and in return, her man wanted to spend his whole life with her. He loved her, and she'd promised to be with him forever. These memories burned in her soul and stabbed at her heart. Tears blurred her vision, and she tripped over some rocks, collapsing into the freezing snow with a bloody leg. Just then, she saw the shadow of a monster looming over her. Finally, she'd found the lowlife she'd been searching for. Caesar is lonely, but he just has to wait a little longer. Juliana was going to take care of this problem and be with her love. Clutching the magic dynamite to her chest, she squeezed her eyes shut, ready to face Caesar. But then, out of nowhere, salvation arrived. The brave Caesar snatched her up and dragged her to safety. The second they were clear, the monster struck, but it slammed into the ground instead. Right now, all Caesar cared about was making sure his lady was safe. The Duke showed up, ready to sort things out, ordering his men to watch Lady Juliana and make sure she didn't bolt. Sir Filion instantly drew his sword and charged at the bloodthirsty monster that was disturbing the peace of humanity. Either way, it's way too dangerous here, so Caesar told his sister she should go back to the mansion with him. He got a slap in the face for that, and Juliana was pissed that he interfered. She didn't want anyone worrying about her whether she lived or died. Without Caesar, she had no reason to live and no reason to go back. Also, being the younger brother of a fallen hero, Caesar couldn't take it anymore and admitted that he was sad too. Truth is, he hates this life. Every day's just a string of regrets, that helpless feeling because his brother died. The guilt of his dad and sister suffering, the constant nightmares. It's all messed up, but the kid keeps going. He keeps living for one reason. His brother gave his life for him. That's why Juliana can't give up. She's gotta keep fighting. If she's gone too, Cezanne doesn't think he could ever forgive himself. Just then, the bloodthirsty forest lord snuck up from behind, but the girl managed to warn her brother about the danger. Without hesitation, the brave knight grabbed her and took to the sky, trying to help. Juliana tossed some explosive mid-air. Seeing that magic explosive, Elaine's gonna be in shock, if it works. The second she grabbed it, she felt a pain in her arm. The monster attacked and landed a solid hit. Seeing that, Duke Filion went ballistic. He charged in, swung his sword, and sliced the monster in two. He bolted towards his escort, hauling ass to make sure she was okay. The girl said everything was fine, no problem, but then she glanced at her hand and saw the wound was gone. When the Duke tried to check out her injury, Elaine pushed him away, and that's when he decided to find out why she was hiding it. She's always looking out for him, and Rihai wanted to return the favor, but it seemed like she was scared of something. Hearing the knight's voices in the distance, she took off, promising to come back and patch herself up. The day after the monster fight, Juliana woke up at noon. The first thing she asked about was the monster, and that's when Master Filion told her it was dead. Not believing it died that easily, even after getting revenge, she feels empty inside. The monster that killed Caesar just dropped dead out of nowhere. Suddenly, Lady Elaine held out something she'd picked up in the woods yesterday. Looks like it belongs to Miss Lakers. Seeing the ring she knew so well on the chain, Juliana clutched it to her chest and cried. It was Caesar's. Not sure if she even had the right to say it, the heroine asked her to move on with her life. Marquis Lakers and Caesar bolted as soon as they heard she was missing, and they were just as torn up as she was. They had that look on their faces, like something incredibly precious had vanished in an instant. They're all hurting because of what happened, but Elaine asked the girl not to become another reason for their pain. Because as long as Juliana's alive, she could help these people find happiness again. Hearing everything and realizing what they'd all been through, the girl could barely breathe through her tears, but she apologized to the family. She's drained. It's awful that she couldn't protect Caesar. She hated herself so much, she was so hurt, she blamed her father and Caesar. Juliana decided to live, to get back on her feet, even though she's still scared and hurting. But now she was sure that with her father and Caesar's help, she could heal. After Elaine left, Cézanne suddenly rushed after her and called out. He'd been wanting to ask her something since yesterday. So he decided to ask now, did she think she could die for someone she cared about? Just thinking about someone dear to her brought Rihi to mind, and she was definitely ready to die for him. According to her, just having the chance to protect that person was a blessing. Hearing that, Cézanne remembered his brother. Before he died, César said that the two of them had protected Juliana to the very end, and now he didn't want his younger brother to suffer because of him. Looking at Lady Elaine, Cézanne couldn't help but notice how similar they were, and decided to reveal why he'd been friendly at their first meeting. When the guy looked at her, he felt like she was his dead brother. An honest and brave person who would do anything to protect their loved ones, that's Elaine all over. And Caesar, who his younger brother respected so much, he'll never forget that, and neither will his sister and father. Then, out of the blue, Milady said she needed to see a certain list and asked for permission to take a look. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince was absolutely losing it. He was so mad he dropped his glass and cut his hand up something fierce. The old man's told him more than once he should be more like Rehist. In his eyes, Licht's a total screw-up. Going on and on about how Rehist is holding him back, the Crown Prince was sure his dad was going to be disappointed in him again. That's when he ordered his men to keep a close eye on Richt's movements and report everything back to him. Licht was banking on Duke Filion screwing up somehow. Fancy clothes, loyal guys, good food, you gotta be careful with all that. Back in Killiard, Cézanne got a thank you from the captain for his hard work, even though he was the one who should have been thanking him. Rehist didn't expect them to strike such a sweet deal. It covered all the costs and even gave them a leg up. On top of that, Cézanne handed over a gift for the Duchess's escort. It's a 20-year-old roster of the dragon-slaying squad, a top-secret document that only she can see. After he left, Rihai wanted to know what those documents were, but Elaine insisted they were personal. Remembering the wound, she said she'd taken care of it as soon as she got back, and it was already healing up. Noticing the Duke's unhappy face, the girl apologized for being rude and possibly hurting his feelings back then. But Rihai didn't need an apology. He wouldn't have liked being touched either, especially since he wasn't feeling well. Anyway, it's late, so the captain told her to go get some rest until tomorrow. The look on her face is something else. Elaine's become important to him, but there's this weird distance between them. And honestly, the Duke really wanted to cross that line, but it's just too soon. When she finally got back to her room, she decided to find out immediately who was on that list. April 18th, 5/11 on the Filion calendar, the roster for the Evil Dragon subjugation team. The list included people like Lloyd de Filion, Taylor Wood, Kevin Breyer. Elaine figured if he boosted the Evil Dragon's corpse, he'd probably be sitting pretty in some high-ranking position. Out of nowhere, she bumped into a crew coming back late. Turns out it was the team collecting that dragon's body. These were the guys. It would be easy to get close, maybe swipe a few pieces. Commander Callius Dennick, Commander Crystal Gwell, and Talos Asgar, commander of the 7th Magic Division. Lady Elaine was deep in research when Lovell popped in unannounced, looking to steal a bit of her time. Word is, His Majesty's about to swing by. He's got something important on his mind. Finally, he managed to connect the dots and found Sir Walter's trail leading to Malton Village up north. The Duke ended up arranging a meet at the Horned Inn, so he headed straight there after rolling into town. Hearing the whispers, he realized he and Elaine were outsiders here, drawing a ton of attention. If things keep going this way, it's anyone's guess if they'll even cooperate with the investigation later on. Before the Seneca incident, the main character ran into Walter a lot because of Lloyd. Even though it's been 20 years, he probably still remembers Elaine's face. If he sees her like this, everything will click. Considering that, it'd be better for her to avoid him, but that's impossible. Rehai was 3 years old, and Milady was thankful to him for growing up with her. Even if she has to leave him behind, it's obvious that Rehai will definitely want to find her. Soon, Duke Fillion and his entourage arrived at the pub for the meeting. Rehai started by saying he received a letter, saying an item related to their case had been found. Then the young guy who found the item pointed out a woman to the captain, saying she had something unusual around her neck. The pendant on her neck belongs to Walter. Even though it's been a long time, it's still the Rister family crest. The knight managed to learn from the woman that she wore it because she found it near Ghost Mountain. He says it's a cursed place that only the villagers around here know about. Legend has it, anyone who goes up there either dies or goes completely nuts, so the locals stay away. After hearing that, the Duke thought it was pretty sus that the woman found the pendant on such a dangerous mountain. Since she doesn't remember much about the place, the captain decided to grill her with a few more questions himself. Before leaving, he thanked the kid for his help. It was time for him to head back to Killiard. Rehist's question about where the landlady got the pendant put her in a seriously awkward spot. Not waiting for an answer, he offered to buy it from the woman, offering her any amount of money she wanted. Looking at the gold coins, the landlady got interested in the offer, and just then her assistant came over. The massive pile of gold practically blinded them. They couldn't believe the master was willing to shell out that much dough. Turns out, people like that don't care about the cost, so the landlady agreed to sell the pendant without a second thought. The Duke barely touched it when the little thief snatched it right out of his hands. The landlady's helper grabbed the boy immediately, even though he swore it was his pendant and he couldn't sell it. Desperate, the boy yelled that he'd found it 10 years ago near Ghost Mountain, and the woman had stolen it. Turns out, he'd even seen the pendant's owner, and even though he was little then, he remembered everything. Hearing this, Rehai snatched the bag of money from the woman and held it out to the boy. He was willing to pay for this information. Blonde hair and blue eyes, according to the kid. This guy was tall, with 2 scars on the back of his right hand. Everything matched up. It's been 10 years since Walter disappeared. They were finally on his trail. After that, the Duke took the boy to eat at the Pine Inn, where he managed to find out his name was Jody. Since he looks like a kid, Rehai assumed his parents owned the inn. Actually, Jody is an orphan, and the innkeepers adopted and raised him, which, yeah, sounds a little rough. They didn't feed him right and made him work like a dog every single day, beating him when he messed up. The kid's turning 15 this year, but he looks younger than everyone else and catches flack because of his foster parents. That's how Jody wrapped up his story, and now he wanted to know what brought these folks here. The Duke looks so young to him, but he's willing to drop that kind of cash, so it must be important. After explaining they were there to meet the owner of the pendant, Rehai asked how the boy met him. It's a long story. Jody remembers him because of Karen, a guy who used to live in the haunted forest a long time ago. Now he's gone. The boy's suspicious of the pendant's owner. As soon as that guy showed up in the village, something bad happened to Karen. It all started a long time ago, when a strange guy lived on Haunted Mountain, and his name was Karen. He had dark, seaweed-like hair, and people steered clear of him because he looked so unkempt and gloomy. The village kids were both scared and curious about him, so they used Jody to find out more. They wanted Karen's hair, so they told Jody to get it, promising to call him brave and leave him alone. Besides, he couldn't get away from them unless he found Karen. Those were the terms they laid out for him. The kid didn't want to do it, but he had no choice but to sneak into Karen's house. It was super creepy inside, but he just needed to grab a few stray hairs. Right when he was carefully searching for hair, he heard a terrifying voice behind him. Karen was back, out of nowhere. Scared out of his mind, the kid crashed into a cabinet and barely saw a vase hurtling towards his head. Turns out, the gloomy dude from Ghost Mountain didn't want to hurt him. At the last second, he grabbed the vase and saved the kid. Then Jody explained that his friends promised to leave him alone if he got the hair. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw how easily and kindly Karen cut off a lock of hair and gave it to him. Karen told him to be smarter about his friends because he wasn't as weird as he seemed. After that, the kids stopped bullying the boy, and he started visiting Karen. Karen was kind but also weird. He never looked out the window to see who was coming. Once he mumbled something in his sleep, and another time, Jody found a beautiful crystal ball in his room, but the guy hid it. The boy didn't care, so he forgot about it. Being with Karen was more important to him. Then one day, on his way to Karen's, Jody bumped into a strange guy who didn't look like he was from around there. The guy in the black hood said he was just passing through because he had some business to take care of. When he found out the boy was also going into the woods, the man with the scar on his hand told him not to go there today. He said something strange might happen, and Jody remembered him because of his odd behavior. For some reason, the kid was disturbed by those words, and he didn't go into the woods that day. But that night, Karen's cabin went up in a huge fire. As soon as Jody saw the fire in the haunted woods, he ran to his new friend's house, but it was too late. His house burned until the downpour started. The kid couldn't do anything but wait till morning for the fire to die down. Wandering through the charred ruins of the cabin, Jody frantically searched for Karen, but he was nowhere to be found. And then he suddenly stumbled upon a glove lying in the soot with that very pendant inside. After that incident on Ghost Mountain, ghosts started appearing. Those who walked to Karen's house were found frozen in terror. They say it's Karen's curse, but the boy didn't think Karen was capable of something like that. The fact that there were only traces of Karen and Walter in the burned-down cabin, but no bodies, baffled Rehist. As Jody saw it, it was obvious that Walter was somehow connected to Karen. Looks like Walter went into the haunted woods and met a guy named Karen there, and it's like they vanished together. Thinking about this, Elaine decided to ask if the boy remembered anything else about Karen. Okay, this might sound weird, but even though Jody hung out with him all the time, he barely knew anything about the guy. But one day, a few days before Walter showed up, Karen opened up about himself. He was super worried, staring out the window day and night. The kid tried to sneak up behind him to scare him, and that's when he heard him muttering. The guy was saying he didn't want to live as Karen anymore, that his real name was Talos Asgar. Elaine's heard that name before. Talos Asgar, commander of the 7th Magic Division, the squad that took down the evil dragon. The Duke decided to dig up some dirt on this guy, but it's late, so he suggested starting first thing in the morning. But there's a snag. Jody's been kicked out of the tavern for good, so now he's got nowhere to crash. As long as Duke Fillion's in this village, he'll watch over him and take responsibility for him. For the first time, the kid felt safe and thought these two would make awesome parents. Before anything else, Rehai told him to keep the money he gave him hidden, because if adults saw that much cash, they might do something bad to him. He could trade them for silver or gold. No way those innkeepers have that kind of cash. This time, nobody's ripping off Jody. The next morning, panic gripped the village. People were freaked out by what happened. They found a kid yesterday, up on Ghost Mountain. Fear and terror pretty much did him in. Anyway, while everyone's distracted, Duke Fillion and his escort needed to get moving. The higher they climbed, the worse the blizzard got. Reaching the summit and seeing the wrecked, burnt-out shack, the heroes knew this was the place. This place is seriously trashed, probably because it's been so long. The wood's all rotted. The Duke figured there was nothing to connect them to Walter until he saw glowing eyes in the dark. The second he told Elaine to cover her eyes, she yelled at him to get over here, now. But a moment later, the captain was gone, like he vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the heroine heard his voice and saw a devastated Rehai behind her, his body covered in blood. He collapsed to the ground, completely spent, but the attendant panicked and rushed to him, trying to bring him around. With tears in his eyes, writhing in pain, the Duke grabbed her throat and demanded to know why she killed his mother. Because of that, his life had become a living nightmare. Before that, seeing the red eyes, Rehai suddenly found himself in the middle of the Seneca horror. Seeing the dying people, looking like ghosts, he couldn't believe it was real. It was all Specto's fault, a monster that drains people's energy, feeding off their trauma. Only then did the Duke realize that the Seneca incident was his trauma. Just then, he suddenly heard a familiar voice, Walter saying he needed to get out of there. It was too dangerous. Panicked, the Lord offered Rehai his hand. They could only survive by escaping from there. Feeling the devil's chains on him, the ruthless Duke Fillion swung his sword and lopped his head clean off. But you can't fool him that easily. He's seen this nightmare a million times. Waking up, the captain realized the hallucination was gone and immediately needed to make sure Elaine was okay. Panicked, he started searching for the girl everywhere and suddenly spotted her lifeless body in the cold snow. She was freezing but couldn't wake up, tearfully begging forgiveness for messing up. Realizing Milady would freeze to death if she didn't come to, Rehist scooped her up in his arms, saying they needed to deal with these hallucinations. In that moment, Lady Elaine grabbed his hand tight. All she wanted was for Rehai not to leave her side. When he heard the name Rehai, a weird feeling washed over him. But there's no time for those thoughts now. He needs to deal with Specto. He was driven only by the desire to save Lady Elaine, praying she could hold on just a little longer. Tripping balls, the heroine saw Bella standing before her, ready to give her her heart. Even though it would save her life, she begged the witch not to do it. But Bella didn't see it as a big deal, since Elaine was already living on borrowed time anyway. The lady's chest burned like she was on fire. That's what it felt like to have someone else's heart beating inside you. Bella thought it was BS that Lady Elaine didn't want her foster mother to die and didn't want this to happen. And as Espel was convinced, she was secretly relieved that she survived thanks to Bella's heart. Every cell in Elaine's body, down to her heart, it all belonged to Bella. She stole the heart of Lloyd's wife. The witch who offed all those poor souls gave her heart to the one everyone blamed for everything. Desperate, the girl tried to defend herself until she met another version of herself who blamed her for all the misery around them. If the heroine hadn't gone to the blacksmith that day, if her stepmother hadn't been such a pain in the ass, things would be different. If she hadn't been born, if she hadn't met Bella, none of this pain would exist. The voices in her head kept telling Elaine she screwed everything up. She promised to protect everyone, but she failed. That's when she decided maybe she should just disappear for good. There was no one left for her to protect. Suddenly, Milady heard a voice, but she didn't know who was calling her. That familiar smile, that strong hand pulling her back. Not everyone's gone yet. There's still one person left. Lady Elaine has to protect Bella's son. Waking up in his arms, she saw Rehai. He almost lost his mind, saving her from the brink. Holding her close, he couldn't deny it anymore. He was so into Elaine that the thought of a world without her terrified him. The second she mentioned Spectre, the captain pushed her away, not realizing she was awake. He said he took care of everything while she was out, and the hallucinations were gone now. But then she noticed Rehai wasn't wearing his coat, just a shirt. Turns out Elaine's body temperature just plummeted when she heard that, so she started pulling everything back onto him. No surprise Rehai was worried. It's for her own good. Even if she's strong, doesn't mean she can handle everything. Besides, if things get rough, she can always turn to the Duke, and he'll help her out. Truth is, she hasn't said a word about her past. If she had, he would have acted like his usual self. Suddenly, they spotted something in the ruins and frantically started searching for it. From under the wooden planks, the Duke pulled out a crystal ball overflowing with mana. This might be the very ball Jody was talking about, but first, Rehai suggested putting it back. Meanwhile, something's going down in the village. Since morning, there's been noises, sounds like screaming. They say if this keeps up, a real monster might show up. Seeing the guys return from the haunted forest, a villager rushed up to them, wanting to know what went down. Elaine was still trying to process everything that happened, so she promised to explain later. Suddenly, they heard a scream. Jody was really worried his aunt and uncle were hurt. He suspected something was up because the guy's face was beet red and the girl was drenched in sweat. The Duke doesn't just have a fever, his body is burning up, which is why he's sweating like crazy. He managed to say he'd be fine after some rest, but then he just collapsed, totally drained. Feeling obligated to help the captain immediately, Elaine told Jody to head back to the shelter. Soon after she got the Duke into bed, she came back to check his temperature. Even though he insisted it was just a fever, a heat that's knocking him out like this is still dangerous. Still, his body temperature has gone down a little in that time. This is a small settlement, so there are no doctors here, but Elaine found some tea that helps bring down a fever. When they touched, the heroes felt a heat building inside them, an awkwardness they couldn't ignore. Deciding they needed to grab some food, the girl, flustered, bolted out of the room. It was so sudden. Everything had been normal, but for some reason, it only hit her now. Walking down the hall, the girl ran into Jody and decided to find out what he was doing there. Turns out, the kid already knew that she and Register had gone to see Karen. What's more, he found out that Elaine had Karen's magic crystal ball in her room. So Jody asked his sister to give him the ball, knowing it was a big ask, because he missed Karen like crazy. This shack is wiped clean, and that magic ball is the only connection left to him. Not knowing if Karen was even alive, the kid felt like having the ball would make things better. Needing the ball to study it, Elaine couldn't give it up just yet. It was the only way they could track down Karen and Sir Walter. Once they finish the analysis, Milady will hand over the orb, but she asked the kid to wait a bit. Awesome news that they might find his old buddy. Jody was definitely willing to hang tight. Elaine promised to tell him the second they found Karen, but turns out they weren't the only ones interested in the crystal ball. That evening, when the heroine brought the Duke his food, she found him asleep in an awkward position in the chair. She told him to lie down on the bed, but Rehist was sleeping so soundly he didn't wake up when she spoke. Judging by the look on his face, he's uncomfortable. Rehist really has grown up. There's no trace left of that kid. His hands are bigger and wider than Elaine thought. She only dreamed of touching him just a little bit more. Feeling the soft warmth of her skin, which sent shivers down his spine, the astonished Duke Filion finally woke up. He held her hand so tightly that Milady couldn't stop herself, slowly moving closer to his lips. But at some point, she snapped out of it and ran off in a panic, her face burning with embarrassment. Elaine, totally freaked out, just bolted without saying a word. She didn't even know what hit her. Rihai's eyes, him holding her wrist, feeling his breath. Up until now, she just thought of him as a cute little bro. But after that close call, she realized she's actually got a thing for Rihai. 2 days later, the captain was doing better, and the two of them were getting ready to head back to Killiard. But before they could leave the village, Jody stepped up, saying he had to ask them something real important. Turns out he wants to go too, so he begged them to take him with them to Killiard. The kid was ready to do anything to get them to take him, hinting that he was an orphan and someone might steal his money. Judging by how eager he was just desperate to get out of this place. So, Duke Filion made a snap decision to take the kid along with them. Since the trip back would be pretty rough on the kid, he told Jody to stick close. After a while, when they got out into the Killian wilderness, the kid was totally blown away by what he saw. Out of the blue, Lady Elaine decided to leave him alone for a bit, hoping he wouldn't get lost. Even though the kid's already 15, Rehist had to double-check with her ladyship if they were really letting him go off on his own. It all looked like they were one big, happy family, but ever since that day, Elaine hasn't been able to look the Duke in the eye. She figured it was better to keep her distance, because if he ever found out, things would get really messy. Sir and Milady's arrival made Lovell stoked. He saw them and happily ran to meet them, greeting them with respect. But when he noticed the kid with them, the subordinate was a little thrown and wanted to know who he was. According to the Duke, the kid's helping them with the investigation. His name's Jody, and Rehist decided to return the favor. He ordered them to get the kid some new clothes and feed him, see what they could offer him, and take him to his room. Once the kid was gone, Lord Lovell cut right to the chase, asking if the Duke had found any trace of Walter. First off, Rehist told him to call Lord Yahello over, handing him Walter's pendant they'd found at the site. This is going to be a long conversation, looks like. The Duke wanted to discuss the rest back in his study. After that, Rehist filled in Lord Lovell on the whole story of the Moltenu Hill village. Lady Hilla couldn't believe she was seeing her father's pendant, but sadly, Walter's exact location is still unknown. According to the Duke, the pendant's still their only lead, but he just needs a little more time. Walter's daughter was grateful they'd found her father's pendant and understood that the search would take time. Because of that, she was ready to offer any help or assistance if His Grace needed it. Then Lovell almost forgot to mention that while the Duke and his escort were away, Countess Muller had contacted him. Soon after, they finally met up. Diana Muller was happy to welcome the Duke to Killiard. After getting Lady Diana seated, Elaine mentioned she'd heard the reason for her visit was about the mining operation. Figuring the Earl Miller's eldest daughter was back at it with the magic stones, Rehist decided to check on their purity. According to Diana's research, 90% of the stuff they're pulling out is top-tier quality. Hearing that, Mr. Filion right then and there offered to cut a deal for the magic stones. It seemed like a normal business chat, but Lady Diana had this kinda awkward look, like she wanted to talk about something else. Once all the paperwork was signed, Rehist thanked the girl for her cooperation, and that wrapped up the meeting. But out of nowhere, Lady Muller suddenly asked if the Duke had received her letter. The air got thick with awkwardness. Lovell realized the report just hadn't been delivered to him. Last time, Rehist wiped out all the monsters in the mine, and now Diana wanted to meet him in person. Just then, Elaine chimed in, saying the Duke rarely responds to letters, so the girl came to talk to him face to face. After talking about His Majesty's birthday banquet, Lady Muller decided to ask the captain for a favor. Hearing she had no one to go with and needed a partner, Rehist appreciated the offer, but had to decline. It's not that he'd already found someone, it's just there's a lot of talk going around about him. The reason he doesn't go to banquets with anyone is because he doesn't want to bring trouble to his date. Saying that Count Muller respects everyone, Diana couldn't care less about the rumors. Still, the steadfast Duke repeated himself one last time, thanking the lady and apologizing. Understanding his feelings, Lady Diana refused to debase herself and left Killiard Palace. Clutching his head after everything that happened, Lovell couldn't figure out what just went down. No matter how badly he needed a partner, he remembers how the nobles mocked the Duke every year. Besides, Prince Michael recently announced he found a bride. It would definitely be a slap in the face to Rehist. His Majesty's a grown man now, but he's never even considered finding a wife. Lord Lovell never mentioned it, but the Duke gets tons of letters about it, hundreds of them. Seems like a waste of time, a subordinate who isn't even Rihi's parent, but he's so concerned about his love life. A beneficial marriage opens up new opportunities, so Lovell figured he should get hitched before Michael does. The whole time they were talking about it, Lady Elaine looked totally pale. She was stressed just thinking about Rihi getting married. As soon as the Duke's aide noticed her, the girl awkwardly said she was just a little lost in thought. Everyone used to get married, and thinking that Rihi would too. She couldn't even think about that right now. The next day, His Majesty contacted Schubert in Kiliode to get him to tailor an exclusive suit. Rumor has it he's the most skilled tailor in Kiliode. He could confidently say the Duke would shine at the banquet. Giving the Lord a choice of the desired design, Schubert was ready to make it for him. Looks like a ton of nobles are gonna be at this banquet, and you just know Rihi's gonna be drowning in female attention. Trying not to picture him dancing with someone else, Elaine freaked, covered her ears, and just lost it. She felt like she was losing her mind. The second marriage gets brought up, she just snaps. First up, Schubert showed off this summer suit that's super popular with the nobles, made from this rare green fabric. Seeing the dark green outfit, Elaine just knew dark green was not doing Rihi's violet eyes any favors. Next outfit's inspired by travel. It's got a decent color, but it's way too basic for a banquet. Looking at the chaperone's sour face, the Duke knew this one was a no-go too. Nothing too old school, nothing too exotic, this girl just wasn't feeling it. She didn't even glance at the classics until she saw the next suit, something you can't buy anywhere yet. It's made from top-tier black fabric with gold embroidery, accented with white and purple details. This suit shows off your physique perfectly, and the tailor swore there's not another one like it anywhere. Wearing this, the Duke's gonna be the star of the banquet, so he snapped it up without a second thought. Schubert then offered to custom-make clothes for his partner, but the Duke said he didn't need anything like that. But then he immediately asked if they had any dresses in stock, and the tailor whipped out a catalog of women's styles. Wanting his bodyguard to have a proper outfit, Duke Filion told Elaine to pick one out. He told her to consider it a thank you for her help back in Multenu village. And even though she won't be alone at the banquet, it's fine, since she'll be escorting the Duke. Before long, our heroes finally hit the road. It was impressive. Everything came together better this year. During the trip, Sophia suddenly got curious and asked Elaine to be honest about where she got that outfit. Lady Rossley didn't get her embarrassment because the outfit really is gorgeous. Knowing the escort herself wouldn't pick out clothes like that, Milady figured the Duke must have chosen her outfit. At the palace, they were greeted warmly by the butler, Jackson, who bowed and invited the guests inside. Rehi was about to take the clothes and bring them to the wardrobe, but he told him to wait in the living room. They arrived earlier than Cézanne expected, so now they have a little time to kill. According to Lady Rossley, this is His Majesty's mansion in the capital, and he celebrates his birthday here every year. All of this weighed heavily on Cézanne, thinking about how Chelsea was so close to His Majesty. Elaine was intrigued by this, since she didn't know, so the young man decided to tell the story. After that incident at Seneca, a lot of the royal family bit the dust. When the positions of King and Crown Prince opened up, Chelsea de Filion immediately stepped into the role. Chelsea gave Prince Michael the Crown Prince title, so he was knocked down to just being the Duke of Kiliard. There's a Chelsea conspiracy theory going around. He let the witch escape so he could snatch the throne. Cézanne heard from Lovell that mercenaries are after His Majesty because Kiliard's thriving under him. Chelsea never imagined desolate Killiard would bloom under the young Duke's leadership. Sophia figures if you ignore Killiard's growth, not knowing how much they're paying to hire mercs, the public will riot. It's pretty clear the mercenaries were hired by someone from the old aristocracy. Nobles are the kind of people who value family status over life itself. They suffered big losses in the Seneca incident and are holding a grudge. Elaine can't believe they're this ticked off about Rihi's success in Killiard. After the incident, there are only 2 people left alive, Chelsea de Filion and Duke Diallo. Even though they're brothers, he was stripped of his claim to the throne and given the title of Duke, but he still gained respect among the old nobles. As far as anyone knows, Diallo suffered huge losses in the Seneca incident, which could be a motive for wanting Rihi out of the picture. Considering everything, it looks like only Chelsea de Filion actually benefited from this whole mess. If this conspiracy theory holds any water, Chelsea's the one who assembled the squad to take down that demonic dragon, which means he's the one responsible for the Seneca incident. The banquet prep's almost done, and according to Michael, only the nobles are supposed to show. His dad really wants to believe he won't screw things up again this time. Michael swore his dad could trust him this time, saying he only failed last time because of some unforeseen complications. Besides, they're saying this time the monster's unmatched. Fencing, talent, business. He turned it all down? Chelsea de Filion couldn't believe this guy even rejected a partner. This time he told his son not to wait, and Michael promised not to let him down again. The second prince was locked and loaded, sure that this time he'd finally get Rihist's approval. With all the preparations complete, Duke Filion ordered the carriage to be prepared for departure. His escort was already waiting for him. He finally appeared before her in his stunning new look. Just glancing at him, Elaine gasped, forgot how to breathe, and couldn't tear her eyes away from him. Only when he got too close did the girl, flustered, say how good the suit looked on him. Soon, Duke Filion entered the banquet hall, catching gazes. Excited voices turned to whispers. In the eyes of others, Rihist is the son of a witch, but he only thought that the places of the king and queen had not changed in a year. Seeing him here, Michael remembered what he had already said, that he would find him. It seems Rihist is doing well, so the prince was glad to have met him here for the first time since last year's banquet. Not hearing even a greeting in response, he also introduced his fiancée, Princess Elizabeth Fernar. Bowing before the Duke, Milady declared that it was a great honor for her to meet him. Michael noticed Regist was solo and figured he still hadn't found anyone special after a whole year. No biggie, though. The prince said to keep our chins up and clink glasses to better days. Then, totally out of the blue, that snake Elizabeth splashed wine all over the Duke. Just when he least expected it, Regi saw a ladies' fan suddenly pop up in front of his face. Turning to Lady Fernan, she said someone needed to watch how they walked in such a long dress. But no harm done, 'cause Lady Lakers was quick to shield the Duke with her fancy fan. Bowing to the crowd, she introduced herself as Juliana Lakers and said she was thrilled to meet Crown Prince Filion. She'd heard His Majesty arrived recently and wanted to discuss their potential engagement, but guessed he'd already found someone else. Michael, smirking, called BS on that, figuring she was still a little off her rocker after being bedridden for a year. Juliana's been fine for ages now. She just needed to take a break from all the social stuff. The Duke Killiard visited her that day, and she was so grateful he helped find that monster. During Michael's investigation, this cursed lady was mentally unwell after her lover died. He was sure Juliana had a chronic illness from her beloved's death, knowing she developed mental issues. In that moment, Miss Lakers was branded. The daughter of the noble Lakers family fell for an orphaned knight. Deciding to intervene, Duke Filion refuted him, saying Lady Lakers never had a knight as a lover. He's been doing business with them for ages and knows everything, so he introduced his partner, asking everyone not to insult her. Michael couldn't believe his eyes, frozen stiff as he heard his father's thunderous voice behind him. After everything that happened, Juliana expressed her displeasure that rumors would now spread quickly among the nobles. Feeling a bit guilty, Rihist apologized. He just wanted to help and messed things up. It's actually fine. She just wanted to know if he was okay. She never imagined the Duke would think she was too good to associate with a witch's son, never thinking she'd end up in this kind of mess, and just like Lady Lakers thought, the captain's got guts. It didn't occur to her that Michael was secretly watching her, and that made her think about Caesar. Juliana still misses him, but she's getting stronger. She can't just sit around anymore, but Caesar's still on her mind. Regardless, she suggested going back to the banquet, but the Duke was heading back to the mansion. In that case, after thanking her colleague for the day, Miss Lakers told him he could reach out if he needed anything. A colleague who's got the hots for his bodyguard, that's how it looks. That evening, Elaine was lost in thought, silently waiting for Rihai to finally come out. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Chelsea was there. She hadn't seen him in person since way back. But if he saw her face in documents or a portrait, or even just caught a glimpse of her from afar, that's a situation we'd better avoid. Watching Chelsea and his crew walk away, she knew it wasn't time to grill them yet. No doubt the nobles at the banquet think Bella's to blame for what went down at Seneca. Elaine couldn't even imagine what it must be like, wishing Rihai was there. All these thoughts are driving her nuts, so she decided to get some fresh air and step out on the porch. Opening the door, she ran right into His Majesty and was speechless for a second. He was staring right at her. Even though the banquet's still going on, Rihai decided to take a little stroll and saw the lady was out for a walk too. Suddenly, a sound came from the banquet hall, and Elaine's attention was immediately drawn to the awful melody. Like the Duke noticed, it's Shudel. Elaine's heard her before in dance class, but now she's just plain awful. That surprised Rihai. He didn't even realize his escort came from an aristocratic family. She had to tell him her family went bust and had to sell their title. Besides, her family's from the sticks. Duke Killiard got the picture, and since everything was cool, he asked her to dance until the end of the Schubert tune. Hearing that, Milady freaked a little. She hadn't danced in forever, and plus the Duke needed to get back to the party. But Rihai wasn't trying to go back there. That song had stirred up some drama. He figured Elaine didn't need to worry about him or his position anymore, saying she never liked that stuff anyway. Accepting his offer to dance, she was scared of stepping on his toes, but the captain just told her to follow his lead. Lost in the dance, the heroine didn't even know what was happening, or if it was okay that she was dancing with Rihai. She didn't know if she was allowed to dance with him or what she should do, but she couldn't think straight. Her heart was pounding so hard. Looking at the amazing Duke, the heroine tried to read his expression. In that perfect moment, Rihist felt amazing. He'd never felt this good in the palace before. He's been in a different mood ever since Elaine became his bodyguard. The captain's been happy. He was so far gone, he couldn't even remember what life was like before she showed up. Maybe the guy's rushing things, but seeing her face lately, he's got a little hope. All this time, Rihi wanted to tell Elaine he was head over heels for her. Looking into his eyes, which kept screaming about true love, she couldn't believe it was real. She didn't know why or when it started, but she just couldn't believe Rihi loved her back. She dreamed of returning his feelings and telling him how she felt, until she remembered her promise to the witch. Without even realizing it, Elaine pushed the love-struck Duke away and rejected his feelings, saying she couldn't accept them. Because of the witch's heart, she felt like she didn't deserve his love. She'd suffered for 20 years, unable to stop Bella. If Rihi found out she loved him with Bella's heart, she couldn't even imagine how much he'd despise her. The sheer terror in her eyes as she pulled away and rejected him made the Duke think she must really hate his guts. Elaine insisted he'd gotten the wrong idea about her saying she shouldn't like him. Rihai didn't get what she was on about. Not that she hated him, but he shouldn't love her either. He honestly has no clue what's going on in that girl's head. In the end, Milady asked him to pretend nothing happened today, then bowed and left. Soon, Chelsea de Fillion got some terrible news. Duke Yahello was dead. They say he passed away at dawn today due to complications from a long-term illness. As for Duke Killiard, he left this morning, so he's probably arrived in Killiard by now. Also, they're looking into that crystal ball thing. They've got surveillance set up, so we'll know soon. Chelsea, eager to get the scoop before anyone else, was pleased that the witch's kid was trying to make something happen even without backup. After that day, Rihai didn't say anything about his confession, and for several days he acted like his normal self. You couldn't miss the distance that had grown between them. Out of nowhere, the Duke called his assistant, but only to send her off early to wrap things up. Even though Elaine tried to talk him out of it, she had to agree and hand over the remaining documents. But the second their hands brushed against each other, fate intervened and sent all the papers flying onto the floor. Talk about a romantic setup. They both bent down to gather up the scattered sheets. Knowing it was going to be awkward, Ray said he totally understood the answer Elaine had given him that day. All the captain wanted was for her to be comfortable around him, so she wouldn't quit because she was having a hard time. There's no way he'd let her stop being his bodyguard, not a chance. If she says she'll stay with him, the Duke doesn't care if it's as a girlfriend or something more. After gathering all the documents, our girl bowed and prepared to head out first, but just as she was leaving, Lovell burst in, raising hell. Catching his breath, he shouted that there'd been a murder right outside the Knight's Order building. The scene was horrific. The victim was brutalized. They even took his eyes. Lovell says there's been 7 murders since the birthday celebration prep started. Now the killers expanded his hunting grounds. They figure the guy died around midnight. Rihai pointed out that the killer only strikes at night and takes body parts from the victims. As far as he remembers, the guy was a cleaner at the Knight's Order, and he had pink eyes. Plus, Lovell knew that the other victims also had unusual hair and eye colors. This killer's abilities and thinking are definitely not normal. Clearly, the victim fought back and took a beating, but the eye sockets were cut out real clean. So, like the Duke was saying, an investigation based only on assumptions might be a dead end. Turning to Lady Elaine, he asked her to stick around a bit so she could help him with the investigation. But the heroine never would have guessed the Duke wanted to be bait just because he's got violet eyes. He's planning to change into regular clothes and head into the alley. When the killer drops their guard, he'll nab him. Like Elaine, Lovell thought it was too risky, especially since they don't have a suspect yet, and it could be a mage or something else entirely. Whether the opponent's a wizard or something else, that lowlife still won't be able to handle the Duke. Feeling a deep sense of despair, Elaine suddenly asked to take on the bait role herself. She's got green eyes and silver hair, meaning her value as bait is higher, but Rehist couldn't let his guard do something so reckless. With that, they both started trying to prove their resolve to each other, but luckily, Lovell quickly calmed them down. He didn't think any of them would crack, so he suggested switching up the strategy. They'd use 2 decoys. Before the mission kicked off, the Duke briefed everyone one last time to make sure they were all on the same page. The plan was, he and Lady Elaine would split up and go solo. The rest of the team would lay low in the alley, ready to jump into action and move out when they saw the signal flare. The operation to nab the killer was underway. Everything was going according to plan, but Lady Elaine was praying the guy would come for her. With her sword hidden under her skirt, she was ready to take down the killer the second he showed his face. She wasn't about to let them get away with such a messed-up violation of the law in the Killiard Kingdom. Just like they figured, the killer was drawn in by the silver hair and green eyes. Their young owner would be the perfect addition to his collection. Elaine headed into a pretty dark area, but since nothing was happening, she figured the killer must have gone after Rihai. Just then, the attacker snuck up from behind, ready to strike, but she sensed him and instantly reacted with her sword. He didn't expect her to block him. She swung again, pushing the killer back. This dude had blood-red eyes, sharp, long claws, and magical powers way beyond human. No doubt about it, he's a demon. He's gotta be the Killiard serial killer. As soon as Elaine accused him, the killer figured she was on to him and came looking for a fight. Now that he was closer, the color of her eyes was even brighter and more beautiful than he imagined. Perfect for his collection. Unlike demons, humans have different colored eyes and hair. All demons have silver hair and red eyes, it's so boring. That's why this demon collects human body parts, trying to snag the rarest colors he can find. Elaine figured that had to be the reason he'd been killing people all this time. The thought that this scumbag was killing people just for a hobby? It made her blood absolutely boil. But taking her down ain't gonna be as easy for this killer as he thought. Her strength and agility clued him in that she's no ordinary person, more like master level. Not that he, a demon, couldn't handle someone that strong, but this chick with the purple eyes definitely piqued his interest. Hearing that the killer was gonna take her out first, then go after the young guy, Elaine told him to bring it on. The Duke's headstrong bodyguard was dead certain that this scumbag wouldn't be able to kill either of them. The demon was surprised at how cocky she was for a human, so he decided to unleash 1,000 years of fury. That's just how demons are. Brutal creatures totally without morals, who value human lives about as much as insects. Elaine had completely forgotten that while she was with Esmal, unlike other demons, he was warm and kind. Seeing blood on his hand, the killer couldn't believe a human had managed to break his demonic fingernails. It's clear this girl's magical power is off the charts for a human. Messing with her is a recipe for serious pain. The demon had no choice but to toy with his victim to avoid a direct confrontation. Noticing he was getting away, the girl chased after him, but it was too late. The fog had rolled in. Suddenly, Elaine heard his voice. The demon was out of time, so he decided to show himself. With that, he suggested they never cross paths again, after which his voice faded into the night fog. He'd planned to stick around Killiard a bit longer, then move on. He never accounted for a variable like her. After getting here through that gateway, and somehow picking up this hobby, he couldn't just kick the bucket like this. After fleeing the scene, the killer thought he'd gotten away clean, until a stranger blocked his path. The mysterious gentleman, holding out a jar of human eyes, implied that he was the owner of this collection. Not knowing where this scumbag got his collection, the demon flew into a rage, demanding he hand over the jar immediately. Seems the gentleman left this place unattended for too long if lowlifes like that killer are infiltrating Killiard. Clenching his fists, the wanderer finished off the serial killer and tossed his body aside like trash. Just a champion of justice, a demon with a good heart, here to protect her son. After everything that happened in the alley, the assistants rushed to Lady Elaine to make sure she was okay. She's all right, but the perp got away with some kind of teleport. He's not human, he's a demon. Figuring he couldn't have gotten far, Elaine knew this was urgent and ordered them to report this to His Grace immediately. Hearing that Milady was going after the criminal, the assistants stated that they were ordered to go with her. Despite their attempts to stop her, the heroine left, following the trail of her senses, which felt the demon's presence. In that magic moment, everything suddenly stopped making sense. The girl saw the man she thought was dead all this time. Holding on to Esmel, crying, she couldn't believe it was really him, that he actually survived. Looking at her so closely, the demon realized that this really was that girl, that Elaine. It felt like a dream. That day, the heroine thought she was mistaken, but Esmel was so happy to see her again. He thought so too. He couldn't find the girl no matter how hard he tried since that day. But the demon didn't understand why she hadn't changed at all. Either way, that's something you can't hide from Esmel. Elaine, who was neither a demon nor a witch, hadn't changed at all, even though 20 years had passed. To Esmel, Bella must have been more precious than her, and that caused unbearable pain. Last time, he said he didn't want to see Bella suffer because of humans anymore. That's why he hated Elaine. The girl actually felt really bad, but that time she said she wanted to stay with Bella. Knowing she'd be stubborn, Esmel warned he'd destroy her if she ever hurt Bella. Now that he knows the girl is living with Bella's heart, he'll probably think Elaine is just like those people who betrayed Bella. But the heroine couldn't hide it anymore, suffering from the pain inside, and had to confess that Bella died because of her. When she tried to free the witch, she was on the verge of death, and she saved her by giving her heart. Now Elaine lives with her heart, regretting every day that she couldn't protect her. After hearing that, the demon seemed consumed by unimaginable rage. He finally understood why she looked the way she did. Suddenly, his angry gaze softened. Esmil didn't actually know the details of that day, but he knew one thing. At least, he didn't blame Elaine for it, because Bella cherished her enough to give her her heart. Before the heroine's tears could even dry, a voice suddenly echoed from the forest. The demon wanted to hear more, but continuing the conversation with witnesses around would be difficult. He suggested they talk about it next time, assuring her that they would meet again very soon. He promised to wait for the girl at midnight tomorrow at Everin Hill. Furthermore, Esmail guessed that she was the one who dealt with that demon, the perp who was committing those murders in Killiard. His hideout's deeper in the woods. This stuff's what the demon wanted delivered to the witch's kid. Esme vanished like he was never there, and right then, the Duke ran up, totally freaked. He'd been searching everywhere for Milady and finally found her, saying she should have told him everything sooner. 'Cause chasing after a serial killer on your own is seriously risky. Elaine said she just had to act fast, and seeing tears in her eyes, Rihai couldn't believe she was crying. She explained the tears by saying the perp threw dirt in her eyes when he bolted. Plus, the perp's a demon, not a human. Looks like he used magic to commit the crimes. Seeing the demon's neck was snapped, the Duke realized it didn't seem like Lady Elaine. The method was too brutal for her. When he asked her about it, the girl knew the truth would come out during the investigation. So, she said she was blinded by the dirt, and when she opened her eyes, the perp was already like that. She said the killer bumped into someone, but she didn't see who it was. Nothing we can do about it. They caught the guy, so the Duke suggested we wrap things up. Rehist was going to join the knights and help move the body, leaving Milady to wait here. The next day, posters were plastered all over Killiard saying the culprit was caught. The worried townsfolk could finally breathe, but when they found out the killer was a demon, the air turned sour. Watching their reaction, the heroine thought about Esmele and waited for midnight with a heavy heart. Right at midnight, she finally met him, throwing herself into his arms. He'd been waiting for her for ages. They didn't finish their conversation yesterday. He asked her to continue the story about Bella that Elaine started. Elaine told Esmele everything about the incident, the tragedy of that day. Someone was controlling Bella, and most importantly, about her condition 20 years later. Everything, without holding back. From what she said, Esmel figured Bella got twisted because someone messed with her head. Thing is, the heroine didn't know who, but from what she dug up, it's gotta be someone from the royal family pulling the strings. Elaine got Esmel's anger, she felt it too, so she was itching to clear Bella's name ASAP. To do that, they first gotta ID the guilty party and find some solid proof. Once they were on the same page, she suddenly asked where Esmel had been and if he knew Register. Turns out he wasn't even in the capital that day. He was investigating a demon portal, which is why he showed up so late. By then, everything was toast. No Bella, no Register, no Elaine. The demon couldn't find a single trace. He tore the palace apart looking, but found Zip. Maybe Bella cast some kind of cloaking spell on the girl. Esmel only tracked down Register a few days later, but he never actually laid eyes on him. He's gotta be hurting bad enough with what happened to Bella. Finding out his buddy was a demon would just break him. Knowing Elaine was now his bodyguard, the demon decided to see if Rehist even remembered she existed. Good thing he doesn't, and Milady really doesn't want her identity blown. She was terrified the Duke would hate her if he found out she was living with Bella's heart, because Bella died because of her. But Esme assured her Bella did everything she could to save her, so it's not Elaine's fault, it's the fault of whoever was behind it. The heroine was so bummed and lonely, not being able to share with anyone. Today she can finally spill it all. She doesn't even remember how much she cried that day, telling Esme what she'd been holding in forever, and they comforted each other. The next morning, Milady woke up, not even remembering what time she got back last night. Realizing she was a whole 3 hours late, she threw on her clothes and bolted out of the bedroom. Seeing her at his office door, the Duke didn't even seem to notice she was late, and just said he'd been looking for her. Turns out, he wasn't even gonna chew her out since it's a day off today. Wanting to ask her something, Rehist suggested they head south with him right now. Turns out the rush was because they got the results back from the crystal ball analysis. According to the mana analysis from the ball, her master is still alive and is currently in the southern part of the continent, in Wolfren village. It soon became clear that Talos wasn't there where the mainland ended. The magic compass shows the trail goes further out to sea. Then Elaine figured he went to another continent. Thinking Talos might be on an island not far from the continent, the compass signal got weaker. If he's on an island, it's not just any of the three, but the one at 12 o'clock, Noir Island. Deciding to take a boat, the heroes ran into a problem. They were refused permission to launch a boat at the docks. The old sailor insisted that even if they asked someone else, they'd get the same answer. And as for those ships out there, it's fine if they're just sailing close to the shore. Thing is, you can't get to Noir Island because of the kraken that lives in these waters. The kraken lives in the Purge Strait, which is the only way to Noir Island. This time of year, schools of striped marlin come to spawn nearby, and marlin are the kraken's favorite meal. In other words, going there by boat right now is like serving yourself up as kraken chow. It's not like the kraken can tell the difference between a person and a marlin. Suddenly, Register de Filion introduced himself as the head of the Order of Files Knights from Killiard and presented his guards. Turns out the sailor had heard of this particular knightly order, the one that's rumored to be super strong. They're the most powerful knightly order, having wiped out thousands of seriously tough monsters. During the conversation, it came out that the sailor's been sailing for 40 years, and the boat he runs practically flies. The Duke figured that meant he must know how to get around the areas where the kraken hangs out. A guy's gotta be ready for anything after 40 years, especially sailing with 2 knights from Falesa. Sure, there are tricks, but too much can go wrong, and those knights aren't exactly sailors. The tough old salt wouldn't budge, not for double the price, not even for 5 times as much. It wasn't until they agreed to 10 times the original fare that they finally shoved off. The sailor told them if he didn't make it, to give the money to his wife and kids. Anyway, good thing they're underway. If they get there, they might find a lead on Sir Walter. They had to find Walter because Talos Asgar is still alive. Meanwhile, using his crystal ball, Talos sensed someone approaching. Soon the heroes arrived safely on Noir Island. The sailor aged about 10 years and they still had to get back. Time to hit the road, leaving the old guy at the harbor to wait for them. Back at the Magic Tower, things were getting hectic. Lately, they'd been swamped with missing persons cases. While the boss was busy with his work, he suddenly heard his assistant's panicky voice, yelling loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Mr. Norton was speechless when he found out someone had broken into his office. He rushed upstairs immediately and, bursting into his office, couldn't believe what he was seeing. According to the assistant, the culprit was long gone when they arrived. They only just discovered someone had been there. Surveying the office, Norton was certain whoever trashed the place had a specific goal in mind. And then he realized the mission results were gone. What's more, only Duke Killiard's mission results were missing. Meanwhile, the compass signal was definitely getting stronger as they got to the island, so Talos had to be somewhere around here. Just then, the compass suddenly went haywire. Its light made it clear to our heroes that Talos was close. First thing they did was scope out the area, see if they could spot anyone shady amongst the yokels. When he spotted the guy in the black cloak, the Duke said the compass was pointing that way too, so the heroes made it their mission to tail the guy in the black hood. At some point, the chase led them to a dead end. The mysterious dude spotted them and straight up teleported away. Register took off like a shot, yelling at the girl to grab the artifact and follow him. He pinpointed the target's location perfectly and jumped down, catching the hooded figure completely off guard. Trapped with those two, Talos couldn't figure out why his teleport wasn't working in this place. Turns out they were using an artifact, which meant Talos Asgard couldn't teleport out of there. They finally had him cornered. Knowing what he was really like, Duke Fillion told him not to do anything stupid and just give up. The second the red-eyed guy held a knife to Asgard's throat, it was clear the heroes were too late. This is way worse than we thought. These guys are surrounded by a serious gang of thugs. The guy in the black hood grabbed Talos, told them to freeze, and threatened to off him. No matter who sent them, Rihai knew they were dead wrong if they thought they could take him. No doubt the Duke's a real piece of work, but they've got the one guy hostage who knows something he wants. That's when Rihist realized that the guy who hired them must be tight with Sir Walter. He decided to find out if Talos knew where Walter was, telling him to keep it real. But on the other hand, the demon was threatening to end him if he said even one word. Realizing he was in deep, Talos didn't even know these dudes asking him about Sir Walter. Seeing them talk to these killers looks like they're not exactly on the same team. In the name of Lord Sir Walter, Rihai promised to keep him alive if he just gave him a straight answer. When he heard he was his lord, Talos realized it was Register de Fillion. Unable to watch any longer, the assassin ordered his men to get those two out of the house, now. In that instant, the resolute Talos used his magical firepower and sent flames surging towards the attacker. Deciding to act, Duke Fillion ordered his escort to deal with those outside. It only took him a couple of seconds to take down everyone who dared question his unstoppable knightly power. Just like he promised, he spared Talos's life, hoping for his honest heart. Throwing aside his sword and kneeling before his lord, Register learned that these people couldn't be killed. According to Talos, if they're just pawns or hired muscle, we're not likely to get any intel. But they're different. If they came to off him and it's a secret mission, the palace must have sent them. We can get valuable info by interrogating them, and we can also use them as key witnesses. The whole reason the old man spilled his guts was because he'd been dying to meet Register for ages. Back then, Talos couldn't go looking for him because he was worried things would get too hairy. He felt like he should have apologized sooner and blamed himself for Register having such a rough childhood. That set the Duke off. He grabbed the old man by the collar and told him to shut his yap about stuff he didn't know. But he never imagined the truth Talos was apologizing for was that Sir Walter had kicked the bucket. Register was floored to hear that his mom wasn't to blame for the Seneca incident and that King Chelsea was behind it all. The truth is, the king threatened to wipe out Talos's entire family if he didn't play ball. Chelsea promised to frame his family for treason and off them. Sounded like an excuse, but the old man had to save his own skin. After taking down the evil dragon, the magic circle made from eyes and blood harvested from its body was complete. That's how they subdued the witch, after which King Chelsea bolted to the city where he planned to move the capital. Talos somehow managed to escape the scene. And now he knew for sure, Register's mother wasn't the mastermind behind Seneca's destruction. She was a victim of betrayal. Now the whole story's out. Chelsea's on the throne, and Register, the witch's son, is an enemy of the kingdom. The king never planned for them all to survive. Rihai lived because Sir Walter looked after him. That's why Talos wanted to tell the whole truth, to expose what really happened in Seneca and plot a revolution. Sir Walter's last words were a request for Talos to tell the story of the Seneca incident in his place. The Duke was losing it, laughing like a maniac. He was completely speechless. If Talos says Sir Walter is dead, then he needs to tell Register about it ASAP. But now the Duke couldn't understand why Sir Walter died, why the Seneca incident happened, and why he, of all people, survived. Even if Talos died 100 times, he couldn't make up for what he's done. He was freaking terrified his dirty secret would get out and King Chelsea would have him iced. He was kicking himself for not having the stones to spill the beans sooner. After hearing about forgiveness one too many times, Ray couldn't take it anymore and bolted. Deciding to go hunt him down, Elaine warned Talos not to pull any stupid stunts. This time, she was ready to find him herself and tear him limb from limb. Remembering the letter before Milady left, the Master asked for it to be delivered to His Grace. The heroine found the Duke by the ocean's blue shore, shimmering softly under the clear moonlight. The wind's a real killer, so she said she booked a room at the hotel and sent the captain there. Truth is, Ray wanted to stay a while longer, telling her she should head back first. So, Milady decided to hang with him a bit too, handing over the letter right away. This is Sir Walter's will, written shortly before his meeting with Talos. Before writing to Register de Filion, Walter wanted to apologize to him. The fact that your Grace is reading this letter means the time has come when Walter can no longer help you. He was about to meet with Talos Asgar, who will also reveal the truth about the Seneca incident. What happened that day wasn't Bella's fault. She was a witch who truly loved people. Walter believed her, and he asks Register to believe her too, and to stop blaming her or himself. The Duke must learn the truth and punish those responsible for this tragedy. Hill will always support him in Walter's place. Attached to the letter, the knight also compiled a list of those close to His Highness Lloyd who can assist. And lastly, Walter apologized for not being able to protect the young Duke until the very end. With deepest respect, he asked that his apologies be passed to his son and daughter, and urged Register to keep pushing forward. Turns out that goodbye they had as kids at the city gates really was the last one. If the young master only knew, he never would have sent Walter. Tears welled up in Elaine's eyes. She was crying because Rihai wasn't. He's always been so strong, but right now he looks completely drained. Thinking about why he's hurting so much and how many more wounds he'll get, Elaine just wished she could take all his pain away. It's really weird. This whole thing has nothing to do with her, and Rihai can't figure out why she's hurting so bad for him. The way he looks at this girl, it's like he's become someone really important to her. Just like she said, the captain's exhausted. He just wanted to stand there like that, holding her for a little while. Even though she couldn't find the right words to say, right now, in this moment, she just let him lean on her and rest a bit. The next day, Register and Elaine went back to Killiard together, along with Talos and the captured assassins. Reciter grilled those hitmen and squeezed every detail about Chelsea's connection out of them. They ratted her out on the condition they could skip town. Talos also handed over key intel about the Seneca incident, all the proof we needed to nail Chelsea for treason. He also promised to make a public statement about the Seneca incident later on. When word got out the Duke had snatched the mage and dared to grab the assassins, the king knew the jig was up. Chelsea wanted to execute the servant, but decided to keep him alive for other work. That son of a gun eventually figured everything out. Afraid the truth would come out and it'd all be over, His Majesty decided to make the first move. That's when he ordered Killiard wiped off the map like it never even existed. Chelsea was ready to bury Rexister alive with the truth about that day if he dared cross him. When it came out that the whole Seneca incident was the king's doing, Lord Lovell just couldn't believe it. And that's why His Grace has been taking so much crap. He was floored too. This insane power grab wiped out the whole royal family. His parents were murdered and disgraced. Hilla couldn't hold back the tears reading her father's will. Deep down, she knew what had happened to him. She'd imagined this moment 1,000,000 times, preparing herself to accept his death. But finding out he died like that, it's the absolute worst. This is a truly devastating loss. Lady Hilla can't forgive the king either. The way her father's life was cut short, she can't let the truth stay buried. That's why Lovell thinks they need to be ready and expose the truth they've uncovered to the world. Planning to do just that, Register intends to show these documents to his father's close associates from the list first. Most of the people on the list are nobles who suffered after the Seneca incident for supporting Register's father. And there's also a guy who was called his close friend, but who knows if he's even still alive. Either way, this fight's gonna be different from anything before. Heroes might pay the ultimate price. Duke Filion didn't want to force anyone, but this time they'd have to risk it all to help him out. Register's people, loyal to the core, all agreed to pitch in. Deeply grateful, Register gave them his word, promising he wouldn't let them down. That evening, Marquis Dirk, a supporter of the former Crown Prince Lloyd de Fillion, was drowning his sorrows in booze, thinking about him. When the butler came in to call him for dinner, he noticed the Marquis was hitting the bottle again. The servant warned him it wouldn't end well if he kept drinking every day instead of just now and then. Besides, that alcohol was meant for His Majesty, so now he didn't know what to do. Every year they barely scrape by, supplying the best wine while being out of favor. The Marquis is risking total ruin. But he didn't care, even if it meant getting on the wrong side of that deadbeat king. If only His Highness Lloyd were still alive, he'd have been a way smarter king than the one we've got now. Out of nowhere, a maid walked in saying a guest had arrived at this late hour, but wouldn't give his name. The Marquis thought it was weird that someone hiding their identity wanted a secret meeting. Even a little buzzed, he decided to go, not wanting to stand on ceremony with someone who clearly wasn't. After getting permission to enter, Duke de Fillion threw back his black hood and asked if Marquis Dirk recognized him. Looking at him, the Marquis was stunned, but definitely recognized him as Duke Killiard. This was their first time meeting like this. Reister came because he'd heard things about the Marquis, about Marquis Dirk, who was respected 20 years ago, and now he's just scraping by. Register came to restore his honor, but Dirk couldn't see how he could possibly get back his former glory. As he claimed, the reason all this happened to him in the first place was that witch, she took out His Highness Lloyd. Hearing this, the Duke dared to suggest that it wasn't his mother's fault. Everyone's saying the witch is to blame for the Seneca incident, but that's totally wrong. The Marquis went white as a sheet, sweat beading on his face, when he found out King Chelsea had his parents offed. After asking him to read the document, the Duke asked for his help if he believed and understood what was going on. After their talk, thinking about the Marquis, Elaine wasn't sure if he could be trusted, scared he'd spill the beans to the king. Register reassured her that Dirk was a loyal ally of his father, and he's got beef with the current king. He's agreed to help, so all we can do is trust him. The truth is, he still remembers and is loyal to Lloyd, so the chance of betrayal is pretty slim. Figuring the girl was beat after working all night, the captain told her to get some serious rest. So instead of dwelling on dark thoughts, she decided to focus on finding allies. Just then, a happy scream rang out, and Lady Sophia rushed to hug her, overjoyed to see her. Cézanne's here too, and he's super curious why Lady Elaine's been so hard to get a hold of lately. Yeah, it's been a while. His lordship's been swamped with stuff recently. So Sophie just kinda casually brought up if anything special had been going on between her and his lordship. Cézanne says they don't mean anything weird by it, figuring they just have a good boss-employee relationship. With that said, Cézanne and Sophia told her to come to them if anything goes down. Before leaving, Elaine told them to hit her up any time if they ever run into trouble. So, the guys are pretty sure nothing's happened yet, but they definitely picked up on some weird vibes. Maybe Duke Killiard and his bodyguard just haven't figured out their feelings for each other.